We had been married for 9 years after dating for one. Brooks Harrington was the most prestigious neurosurgeon in the United States. He suffered from severe obsessive-compulsive disorder and extreme mysophobia. The Patek Philippe fountain pen he used had never not even once been moved from its exact spot on his mahogany desk. Charlotte Kensington called her personal attorney. "Attorney Lawson, I think I'm going to need you to initiate a unilateral divorce. Please prepare the paperwork." Charlotte and Brooks had gotten married in the Hamptons, but their primary residence was in New York. Under local legislation, filing for a no-fault divorce was a straightforward process. "Miss Kensington, to file for divorce, there are certain standard procedures we must follow." Before Attorney Lawson could finish, Charlotte interrupted him. "My husband has been unfaithful." "Understood, ma'am." "I'll prepare it immediately," the lawyer replied swiftly. Hanging up the phone, Charlotte turned to the associate at the Patek Philippe boutique on Fifth Avenue with a polite smile. "Excuse me, it looks like I won't be needing this watch anymore. Could you recommend something suitable for an older gentleman?" Originally, Charlotte was going to buy Brooks a limited edition Nautilus. He was an extremely punctual man. He was supposed to be home by 9:00 p.m. that night, but a sudden issue with a medical supplier had delayed him. None of that mattered anymore. Charlotte ended up purchasing a custom grand complication chronograph, a much more expensive piece in memory of her late father. Stepping out onto Fifth Avenue holding the shopping bag bearing the Calatrava Cross logo, she received a call from Brooks. His voice, as always, was calm. "An emergency surgery came up. I won't be able to come home tonight or tomorrow." "All right." Charlotte's voice was like a tranquil sea. "I left some organic chicken bone broth with herbs simmering on the stove. Make sure you have some when you get back." "I will," Brooks promised. Hearing his words, Charlotte fell silent for a moment. Brooks Harrington, the youngest chief of neurosurgery in the country, was a man who used to make her soup with his own hands. Brooks loved her, but love must be unique, exclusive. And since Brooks still harbored another woman in his heart, that love had been corrupted. "Charlotte," he asked, puzzled by her silence. Charlotte snapped back to reality. "All right, get to the hospital." Only then did Brooks hang up. Charlotte climbed into the waiting Bentley and instructed her assistant Brooke to prep the private jet. She flew back to New York City as fast as possible from her business trip. 13 hours later, arriving at her Park Avenue penthouse on the Upper East Side, her late-night suspicions were confirmed. The door opened from the inside before she could even punch in her code. Standing there was Vanessa Caldwell, Brooks' first love from high school and the most popular girl from their teenage years. With her wavy burgundy hair, she wore a silk slip dress. Seeing Charlotte, she smiled charmingly. "Charlotte, you're back. Don't get the wrong idea. I twisted my ankle here yesterday and Brooks was just helping me." Without changing her expression, Charlotte asked, "Since when have you been staying here?" "For about 2 weeks. Brooks told me the guest room was empty. I just moved back to the States and couldn't be bothered to apartment hunt." Vanessa left the sentence hanging on purpose. She wanted to see Charlotte angry, hurt. As a woman, Charlotte knew exactly what she was trying to do. She nodded. "Ah, I see." Walking past her, Charlotte offered a gentle piece of advice. "Still, Vanessa, it would be best if you found an apartment soon. You can't stay here forever." Back in the master bedroom on the second floor, an indescribable bitterness filled Charlotte's eyes. Just moments ago, she had noticed a silver ring hanging on a chain around Vanessa's neck. Brooks had an identical one. Charlotte had seen it hidden in a drawer in his study. Passing by the kitchen, the broth on the stove was still warm. Charlotte had a sensitive stomach, and as a doctor, Brooks had managed her diet for years, but now she had no appetite for it. In the early hours of the morning, Brooks, having finished his surgery earlier than expected, returned home. He was surprised to find Charlotte sitting alone, awake in the dark. "Charlotte, you're not sleeping." She looked at him in silence. A crisp white shirt, dark tailored trousers. The simplest combination highlighted Brooks's distinguished aura. "I wasn't tired," she replied. Brooks reached out and touched her forehead. Only after confirming her temperature was normal did he sigh in relief. "It's cold. Be careful not to catch a chill." After saying this, he headed straight for the bathroom. Brooks was a germaphobe. After surgery, he would sanitize himself completely. After touching anyone, including his wife, he would wash his hands or even shower. However, this time, barely 10 minutes had passed before he rushed out in a bathrobe, his phone in hand. Vanessa fell downstairs. "I'm going to see what happened," before Charlotte could respond. Brooks was already taking long strides toward the door. When she followed him out, she saw him holding Vanessa in his arms, his face an image of pure anguish. In that instant, Charlotte understood Brooks's mysophobia didn't apply to everyone. Vanessa was his exception. An ambulance from Lenox Medical Center arrived swiftly, and the paramedics placed Vanessa on a stretcher. Charlotte handed a long overcoat to Brooks, who was still only wearing his bathrobe. He seemed to realize his blunder, a flash of guilt crossing his face. "Charlotte, don't misunderstand. Vanessa is just a friend." Before Charlotte could speak, a paramedic approached. "Are there any family members? We need someone to accompany the patient to the hospital." "I will," Brooks replied without hesitation. "I'm her legal guardian." Realizing his slip, he quickly corrected himself. "I'm her friend. I'll go with her." He glanced sideways at Charlotte before climbing into the back of the ambulance. The vehicle sped away, leaving Charlotte standing alone in the New York chill, wrapped in a tangle of emotions. She had always believed Brooks truly loved her. Despite his germophobia, he had never rejected her. Despite his grueling schedule, he made time to cook for her. He was cold to everyone else, but tender with her. Yet in front of Vanessa, all of that seemed to vanish. The next morning at the executive suite of the Kensington Group, "Miss Kensington, the divorce proceedings with Dr. Harrington have commenced. The relevant documents have been filed," Attorney Lawson reported clearly. Charlotte, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, stared absently out the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "How do you plan to handle the division of assets?" the lawyer continued. Charlotte snapped out of her daze, gently massaging her temples. "I will keep the Park Avenue penthouse. The rest of the marital assets will be split down the middle according to the law." That penthouse was the first property she bought with her own money after asserting her independence. After her father died of cancer, it had become her only true home. She couldn't give it to Brooks. "Ma'am, given that the other party's infidelity is the catalyst here, we could push to leave him with significantly less," Lawson added. Charlotte smiled bitterly. "That's not necessary. Split it 50-50. Consider it payment for saving my life." 10 years ago, Charlotte had been in critical condition after a severe car accident orchestrated by corporate rivals. Despite the opposition of other surgeons who deemed it too risky, Brooks had insisted on operating, saving her life. Giving him half the assets was fair. Lawson didn't push further. "In a week, the divorce decree will be finalized. Where should we send it?" "To Lenox Medical Center." Lenox was where Brooks spent most of his time when he wasn't home, Charlotte added. "The Kensington Group is expanding internationally and will be relocating its global headquarters to London. Therefore, after the divorce, we will suspend all funding and support to Lenox Medical Center. Charity funds, medical equipment, state-of-the-art labs, pharmaceutical grants, all of that support had been Charlotte's blatant favoritism toward Brooks. But now that they were separating, there should be no more ties." "Understood," Lawson nodded. "And the watch I bought the other day, please have it brought to my office." "Thank you." "Also book me a flight to London for next week," Charlotte instructed. "And finally, I don't want the divorce made public just yet. I don't want it negatively affecting the company's stock." Lawson nodded. Only then did Charlotte stand up and head for the private elevator. She was going to visit Vanessa. She wanted to see what was so special about the woman Brooks couldn't forget. Lenox Medical Center. The moment Charlotte walked past the nurse's station, she heard the whispers. "The woman with Dr. Harrington must be his wife. They make a gorgeous couple." "I know, right? The doctor was personally giving her water and administering her meds. His wife must be so happy." Expressionless Charlotte walked up and gently tapped the counter. "Excuse me, could you tell me which room Miss Vanessa Caldwell is in?" The nurse, intimidated by Charlotte's elegant, commanding presence and designer sunglasses, hurriedly checked the registry. "Miss Caldwell is in VIP Suite 1218. Would you like me to escort you?" "No, thank you." As Charlotte walked away, the nurse muttered to her colleague, 1218 is Dr. Harrington's wife's room. Who is that woman?" Hearing this, a shadow of melancholy crossed Charlotte's eyes. She and Brooks had kept their wedding very private. Few people at the hospital knew her identity, but it didn't matter anymore. The position of Mrs. Harrington would soon have a new occupant. Charlotte reached VIP Suite 1218. Before opening the door, she looked through the glass panel and saw Brooks and Vanessa embracing. "Brooks, if I hadn't gone abroad back then, would I be your real wife right now?" Vanessa asked, her eyes red, leaning against his shoulder. For some reason, Charlotte's heart clenched. She wanted to know the answer, yet dreaded hearing it. Then she heard Brooks's reply, yes. The sword of Damocles hanging over Charlotte's head finally dropped. She knocked on the door and, after hearing a scramble inside, slowly opened it. As their eyes locked onto hers, she maintained a polite smile. "Miss Caldwell, are you feeling better?" Charlotte offered the basket of luxury fruits she had brought. Vanessa accepted it. Thank you, I'm fine. Brooks just worries too much. Brooks tried to explain himself. Charlotte Vanessa's condition was unstable yesterday, so I stayed at the hospital with her. Don't misunderstand, I know. Charlotte nodded. Don't worry about it, she had always been this understanding. But today, to Brooks, her words felt strangely hollow. From the bed, Vanessa spoke up again. Charlotte, Brooks has been like this since high school. He seems cold, but he's so warm on the inside. Don't worry, as soon as I recover, I'll move out of your house. I won't bother Brooks anymore. Her words were a thinly veiled way to flaunt her long history of intimacy with Brooks while playing the victim. Charlotte played along. With my work and Brooks being so busy at the hospital, it's true we don't have the time to care for you properly. That's why I've hired a private nurse and rented a luxury apartment for you near the hospital. It'll be much more comfortable for your recovery. Barely had she finished speaking when two professional nurses entered the room with Vanessa's luggage. Vanessa's face hardened. She shot a pleading look at Brooks. Perhaps even Brooks thought it was inappropriate to keep his first love in his marital home because he didn't object. Vanessa, Charlotte is right. A private nurse will be much more professional than we can be. Vanessa said nothing more. At that moment, Brooks checked his watch. I have another surgery. Head home first. Don't wait up for me. All right, Charlotte nodded. Brooks left and the nurses began packing up the room. Only Charlotte and Vanessa remained. Vanessa looked at her with pure arrogance. You think I don't know? You only got close to Brooks for his money. If it weren't for him, how could you afford to live on Park Avenue? She sneered. A materialistic woman like you doesn't suit him. But don't worry, when you divorce, I'll tell him to give you a generous settlement. Charlotte couldn't help but find it hilarious. I see Dr. Harrington hasn't told you who I am. Vanessa scoffed. What does it matter who you are? Brooks doesn't love you. He's only with you to distract himself from the pain of losing me, forcing himself to love someone else. If it hadn't been you, he would have married anyone else. Then I hope your dreams come true, Charlotte replied, ambiguously turning on her heel to leave. Downstairs, she got into her waiting car. She looked up at Lenox Medical Center. It was probably the last time she would ever be there. Goodbye, and may we never meet again. In the dead of night, Brooks still hadn't returned home. Charlotte sent him a text message. Did your surgery finish? When are you coming home? Surprisingly, Brooks replied almost instantly. The actual surgery is over. He's tired and fell asleep next to me. Don't interrupt us. The tone was unmistakably Vanessa's. Charlotte's hand trembled, almost dropping her phone. She realized that Brooks's true home was wherever Vanessa was. Charlotte's gaze drifted to the wedding photo hanging in the center of the bedroom, taken in a picturesque estate. She was 21 then. Her father hadn't yet succumbed to cancer. With his last ounce of strength, he had placed Charlotte's hand in Brooks. Please care for her, value her, and make my daughter happy. Let her live a joyous life. That was his dying wish to his son-in-law. And Brooks had sworn, I will love Charlotte my whole life and treat her well forever. But he had broken his promise. Perhaps love was volatile by nature, and the word forever was just a decorative illusion. Charlotte looked at Vanessa's message again and typed a new one. Tomorrow is the anniversary of my father's death. I have something to tell you. After sending it, she turned off her phone. That night, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The next morning at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, the sky was overcast, and a fine drizzle was falling. Her father had loved fine wine. Charlotte had several cases of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon brought to the headstone. She poured the contents of a bottle onto the earth. Dad, he lied to me. He has always loved someone else. I haven't been happy all these years. Standing before the person who had loved her most, her voice finally broke, but only the sound of the rain answered her. Some time passed. A transparent umbrella suddenly blocked the cold raindrops. Turning around, Charlotte saw Brooks impeccable in a tailored black suit. His amber eyes were full of concern. He gently stroked her cheek. Charlotte, why are you crying? The tips of Brooks's fingers were warm. He seemed to not even realize he had touched her wet cheek without sanitizing his hands first. But Charlotte saw long, burgundy hair clinging to the lapel of his suit. She took a step back and swatted his hand away. It's nothing. I just missed my dad. Brooks's voice was soft. Don't be sad. Your father is watching over you from heaven, and I will always be by your side. Looking at her red eyes, he asked again, what did you want to tell me over text? Charlotte was going to bring up the divorce, but the words died on the tip of her tongue. She changed the subject. Your 30th birthday is in 5 days. I've prepared a gift for you. Before she could finish, Brooks's phone rang. Pulling it out, Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. He frowned and hung up, but Vanessa immediately called back. The ringtone echoed loudly through the quiet cemetery. As Brooks went to power off the phone, Charlotte spoke. "Answer it. Maybe it's an emergency." Saying this, Charlotte stepped out from under his umbrella. A bodyguard waiting nearby instantly opened a large black umbrella over her head. Only then did Brooks answer. Vanessa's pitiful voice wailed through the speaker. "Brooks, I'm all alone in this apartment and I'm so scared." Hesitation filled Brooks' eyes. Charlotte said calmly, "If you're so worried, go." Hearing this, Brooks sighed in relief. "I'll come home tonight to be with you." "All right." Charlotte nodded. Brooks turned and walked away. Charlotte watched his back until he disappeared into the mist. She turned back to her father's headstone and whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry. I chose the wrong person. I didn't know how to make myself happy. I'm ashamed to look at you." Only the wind and the rain responded. Upon returning home, Charlotte felt her temperature rising. Her concierge doctor came urgently and prescribed some fever reducers. But in the dead of night, the fever spiked again. She reached her hand across to the other side of the bed, but it was cold and empty. Brooks had broken his promise. He hadn't come home. Charlotte opened her text thread with him. She saw a message from 3 hours prior. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. Vanessa is very emotionally unstable. I think I have to stay with her tonight." It was the first time he had ever apologized to Charlotte for another woman. Charlotte looked at the wedding photo on the nightstand. In it, both were smiling, but it seemed only she was genuinely happy. "All right," Charlotte replied. "A heart doesn't turn cold in an instant. The true goodbye always arrives in silence." At 9:30 the next morning, Brooks arrived home punctually with breakfast. He called out her name out of habit, but there was no response. Biting his lip, he took off his coat, sanitized thoroughly, and carefully entered the bedroom. Seeing Charlotte curled up in bed, he sighed in relief without realizing it. He sat on the edge of the mattress and noticed a half-empty blister pack of pills. At that moment, Charlotte opened her eyes. "You're back. Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Worry filled his eyes. Charlotte replied calmly, "Just a mild cold. I'm fine now." Besides, would Brooks have left Vanessa to rush to her side if she had told him no? She didn't want to humiliate herself. Brooks didn't pry further. He noticed the nightstand was bare. "Where's our wedding photo?" He was incredibly sensitive to the placement of every object in the house. The frame was looking a bit tarnished. "I sent it out to be polished," Charlotte improvised. She knew Brooks wouldn't care. As expected, Brooks simply nodded. "I brought breakfast. Your favorites. Thank you." Charlotte replied politely. When she came out of the bathroom, the breakfast she usually ate was laid out on the dining table. Avocado toast on artisanal sourdough, smoked salmon, and fresh squeezed orange juice. For 10 years, Brooks had memorized her exact preferences. Charlotte stared at it for a moment. If Vanessa didn't exist in Brooks's heart, this life would have been truly happy. But there are no ifs in this world. "Brooks, if you have time today, let's go out for a walk," Charlotte proposed suddenly. Brooks didn't hesitate. "Sure." After breakfast, Charlotte watched Brooks change and aggressively sanitize his hands, feeling a sting of bitterness. "Brooks, today will be our final farewell." Without a chauffeur or security detail, they took a cab to the aquarium. Brightly colored tropical fish swam in massive tanks. Actually, Brooks and Charlotte had once kept betta fish, but as novices, they didn't know they had to be kept in solitary tanks otherwise. They would fight until they severely injured each other. At that moment, an enthusiastic aquarium guide approached them. "Sir, ma'am, what do you think of the butterfly fish? They are strictly monogamous. If one dies, the other never seeks another mate. It carries a beautiful meaning." Why was fidelity considered such a beautiful meaning? Yet, for some reason, Charlotte suddenly asked Dr. Harrington, "If I died, what would you do?" Hearing the question, Brooks frowned and reprimanded her sternly. "Don't say such morbid things." Then, with a dead serious expression, he added, "If you leave this world, it won't take long for me to follow you." Charlotte froze. Brooks's tone was undoubtedly firm, but that couldn't hide the fact that his heart harbored love for another woman. In the end, Charlotte bought a pair of butterfly fish and a small glass tank. "Brooks, how about we put this in your office?" she suggested. "I want you to think of me every time you see them. I'll be leaving your side soon, too." "No problem," Brooks agreed immediately, entirely missing the double meaning of her words. On their way back, they surprisingly took the subway. The train car was packed. Brooks unexpectedly wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly against his chest. It was an unprecedented display of intimacy initiated by him. But right at that moment, his phone rang again. "Charlotte, can you answer that for me?" "It's in my pocket," Brooks asked casually. Charlotte realized that by hugging her in a crowded public space, he seemed to have temporarily forgotten his misophobia. She pulled out his phone without thinking. It was Vanessa. "Brooks, where are you? I want you to be with me." Vanessa's voice through the speaker was saccharine and needy. Brooks looked at Charlotte speechless. He felt a wave of embarrassment and a strange, creeping dread sprouted in his chest. He felt that if he went to Vanessa today, he would lose Charlotte forever. But Charlotte loved him so much. How could she ever leave him? "Go," Charlotte said considerately. "I'll tell the driver to pick us up at the next stop." At that moment, the automated transit voice echoed through the car. "Next stop, Montauk Station. Final destination." For some reason, they both fell silent. The train arrived at the end of the line. "Charlotte, this is the last time. I promise you." Brooks consoled her. "All right," Charlotte nodded. As Brooks turned to leave with the bag containing the butterfly fish, Charlotte's cold hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. He was slightly startled but didn't pull away. "What's wrong?" Charlotte squeezed his hand tighter, then slowly let her fingers slip until they intertwined with his. She shook her head. "It's nothing. I just suddenly felt that we've gotten too used to each other." "Don't you think?" Brooks bit his lip and nodded. "We've been together for 10 years. It's normal to be used to it." Then from now on, I'll have to try hard not to be so used to it." After all, in just 4 days, she would vanish entirely from Brooks's world. Charlotte smiled softly and let go of his hand bit by bit. Brooks felt a sudden emptiness in his chest. "Hurry up and go." "Don't make her wait too long," Charlotte urged him. Brooks looked at her deeply, then turned and walked away, until his figure disappeared into the crowd. Charlotte stared at the platform. Perhaps Brooks would never realize that those who arrive at the end of the line rarely travel back the same way. The airport could never wait for the train, and in Brooks's life there would never be a second Charlotte Kensington. 7:30 p.m., Park Avenue penthouse. Charlotte gazed at the home she had shared with Brooks for 9 years. Medical journals on the custom shelving, his insulated thermos on the kitchen island, the green bamboo plants on the terrace. His footprints were everywhere. She walked into the massive walk-in closet. Brooks preferred a minimalist, monochromatic style. She loved bold, vibrant colors. Their clothes hanging side by side looked harmonious yet dissonant, just like the 10 years they had spent deceiving each other. Exhausted, Charlotte texted her assistant, Brooke. "Brooke, call a moving company." "Yes, Miss Kensington," Brooke replied instantly. Charlotte then contacted attorney Lawson. "Lawson, please transfer the title of my Upper West Side condo to Mr. Harrington. I've already arranged to have his belongings moved there." The Upper West Side neighborhood was a 15-minute drive from Lenox Medical Center. Brooks had originally wanted to establish their marital home there, but his grueling residency schedule had prevented him from house hunting. Charlotte had suggested the Park Avenue penthouse because it held special meaning to her and they had settled there. Last year, Charlotte had quietly bought back the Upper West Side condo and completely renovated it. It was supposed to be her gift for Brooks's 30th birthday, except now she wouldn't be celebrating it with him. Not his 30th, not any other. Watching the movers pack up Brooks' things box by box, Charlotte didn't feel the crushing sadness she had expected. Falling in love was simple. Falling out of love was too. When her assistant left with the movers, Charlotte reminded her, "Do not tell anyone that I am moving to London, nor that I am relocating the global headquarters." Brooke nodded seriously. "Understood, ma'am. I'll make sure no employee of the Kensington Group leaks the information." Once Brooke and the crew left, the penthouse returned to a dead silence. It had finally reverted to its original state, a home solely for Charlotte Kensington. Meanwhile, at Lenox Medical Center in the chief surgeon's office, Brooks watched in silence as the butterfly fish swam in the small glass tank, his heart restless. He remembered the situation when he had gone to Vanessa's apartment earlier. "Brooks, did she buy that for you?" Vanessa had asked suddenly from the sofa when he carefully placed the fish tank on a side table. "Have you fallen in love with that woman?" "Of course not," Brooks denied almost instinctively. "It's just Abbott." Vanessa reached out and grabbed his hand. "That's a bad habit. You need to fix it." Brooks had lightly squeezed Vanessa's fingertips, adjusted her blanket, and remained silent. A butterfly fish suddenly bumped against the glass tank. The faint tap pulled Brooks out of his thoughts. He looked down at his mahogany desk. The pen holder, the file tray, the fountain pen, everything was from Tiffany & Co. The pen holder and file tray had tiny daisy stickers on them. Charlotte loved daisies. In fact, everywhere Brooks looked, there were traces of Charlotte. The high-end massage chair she bought him retailing at over $20,000. the emerald velvet curtains chosen by Charlotte because the color was supposedly good for his eye strain. Brooks stared blankly. His world was already completely saturated with Charlotte. As if possessed, he pulled out his phone and opened their text thread. There were no unread messages. He frowned. How was that possible? Charlotte always shared mundane details of her day with him, or at least asked what time he'd be home. He snapped a photo of the fish tank and sent it to her as a test. Charlotte, the fish are adapting well. 2 hours passed and Charlotte didn't reply. Brooks's heart suddenly sank. Just as he was about to call her, a reply popped up. Yes, I hope they live happily ever after. Only then did Brooks let out a breath of relief. Charlotte, I have several major surgeries to oversee at the hospital lately. I'll be working nights. Don't wait up. After sending the message, a nurse called for him, and he stepped into a consultation room. He had no idea that at that exact moment, Charlotte was drawing an absolute dividing line between them. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang at the Park Avenue penthouse. Charlotte thought it was a food delivery, but opening the door, she found Vanessa standing there, displaying zero signs of a twisted ankle. Miss Caldwell, what do you want? Obviously, I've come to tell you to bow out gracefully. Divorce Brooks immediately. Vanessa crossed her arms, scowling. Brooks's distracted reaction yesterday had triggered a sense of crisis in her. Don't speak, just listen. Vanessa dialed Brooks's number, put it on speakerphone, and signaled for Charlotte to keep quiet. Brooks, it's me. I want to ask you something and you have to answer me honestly. Yes. Charlotte heard Brooks's gentle reply through the speaker. Do you truly love Charlotte Kensington? Vanessa demanded. Charlotte held her breath for a second. Brooks fell silent for a long moment before answering. Vanessa, I've been with her for 10 years. I've just gotten used to having her by my side, so it's just a habit, not love. Right, Vanessa pressed. Right, Brooks replied. Hearing that answer, both Charlotte and Vanessa smiled. Charlotte's smile was laced with a profound, liberating bitterness. She realized she had wasted a decade of her youth on unrequited love. Vanessa's smile was a mocking sneer, thinking Charlotte had been too overly confident. For 2 days, Brooks really didn't come home. To the sparse messages he sent between shifts, Charlotte always replied with brief, single-word answers. When love reaches its end, it is irreversible. It is better to let go and become strangers again. Park Avenue penthouse. Charlotte sat by the living room window, deep in thought. Tomorrow she was leaving for London. Brooks hadn't come home, nor was he sending messages anymore. Suddenly, a fountain pen sitting in the corner of a side table caught her eye. It was Brooks' favorite Patek Philippe pen, the exact object that had triggered her realization to leave. It must have fallen out by mistake during the move. Since they were separating, she should return it to its owner. Charlotte got up and headed to the underground garage. 30 minutes later, she arrived at Lenox Medical Center. Before reaching Brooks's office, she overheard some patients chatting in the lounge. It seems Dr. Harrington only drops his germophobia around his wife. With her, anything goes. Yeah, I saw it too. I wonder what they're like when they're alone. First the nurses, now the patients. Everyone was mistaking Vanessa for Brooks's wife. Listening to this, Charlotte reached Brooks's door only to be told by an administrator Dr. Harrington took the day off. He didn't come in today. All right, she nodded. She then walked toward Vanessa's VIP suite. If he was off duty and not at home, he was undoubtedly with her, but the room was impeccably clean and empty. Excuse me, has Miss Caldwell been discharged? Charlotte asked a passing nurse. The nurse nodded. Yes, doctor. Harrington processed her discharge papers this morning and took her home. Hearing this, Charlotte gripped the fountain pen in her pocket. She knew the luxury apartment she had rented for Vanessa was completely empty and the private nurse had been dismissed. Charlotte pulled out her phone and dialed Brooks' number. Vanessa answered. Brooks is with me. He's not coming back. After his birthday tomorrow, we're going to file the divorce papers. Charlotte asked calmly, is that his decision or yours? On the other end, Vanessa laughed scornfully. Obviously, it's Brooks. With that, the call disconnected. Charlotte looked at the phone, unable to hide her disappointment. She squeezed the pen and sighed. In the end, she couldn't return it to him in person. It was pitch black outside. 9:43 p.m. For the first time in 10 years, Brooks was spending the night away from home. He had always believed that any place other than the hospital or his own meticulously clean house was crawling with bacteria. Whenever he went somewhere new, he had to sanitize it repeatedly, which was why he hated staying out. But with Vanessa, his mysophobia and OCD seemed to magically vanish. Charlotte couldn't help but remember what she had overheard earlier. I can't imagine how a germaphobe like Dr. Harrington treats his wife in bed. He must love her with every fiber of his being. Charlotte lowered her eyes. She recalled her nights with Brooks over the past decade. He had always been overly cautious, strictly traditional, and no matter how late it was after intimacy, he always had to thoroughly clean himself. Indeed, love and the lack thereof manifest in the smallest details. 9:02 a.m. Still no sign of Brooks. Charlotte slipped the diamond ring off her left ring finger. It had a cluster of raw diamonds set into the band. Brooks had personally mined the diamonds during a medical volunteer trip in South Africa. Their clarity was astonishing. Charlotte had fallen in love with the ring at first sight, just like when she saw Brooks for the first time. It had been love at first sight. The ring, along with the fountain pen, was placed into a thick manila envelope. Finally, Charlotte pulled out a piece of heavy cardstock and wrote a single-line message for Mr. Harrington. After doing all this, she grabbed her luggage and walked out the door. She slid the envelope halfway under the threshold of the penthouse door. She pulled out her phone and sent Brooks a final text message. Happy birthday. Then delete contact. Remove SIM card. She inserted a new international SIM card. Sitting in first class on a British Airways flight bound for London, Charlotte felt an immense sense of liberation. Brooks, now we are as far apart as mountains and oceans. We will never meet again. Meanwhile, at Lenox Medical Center, Brooks, after making sure Vanessa was settled, hurried back to his office. Barely had he plugged his phone into the charger when a nurse knocked on the door. Dr. Harrington, you have certified mail. Thank you. Brooks took it. The envelope had no return address. Puzzled, he tore it open. Inside was a stack of legal documents. He frowned and flipped through them quickly. Shockingly, it was a finalized divorce decree from the state of Nevada. By the authority of this court, it is ordered that the marriage between the plaintiff Charlotte Kensington and the defendant Brooks Harrington is hereby dissolved, releasing both parties from all marital obligations. Brooks read every word out loud. The instant his brain processed what it meant, his heart stopped. He jumped up immediately and sprinted out the door. Dialing Charlotte's number. The number you have dialed is powered off or out of service. He opened his text messages and saw Charlotte's final text, happy birthday. Charlotte, why is your phone off? Message failed to send. You are not on the recipient's contact list. At that moment, completely disregarding his professional image, Brooks flagged down a yellow cab and rushed to the Park Avenue penthouse. Access denied. The mechanical female voice of the smart lock sounded ruthless. Brooks lowered his head in utter frustration and saw the envelope poking out from under the door. Tearing it open, the diamond ring and the fountain pen clattered sharply onto the hallway floor. The note read, "Give the ring to the one you truly love. We won't meet again." Brooks couldn't even hold on to that lightweight piece of cardstock. He didn't want to believe it, but he was forced to accept reality. The Charlotte he remembered had always known how to cut her losses and walk away decisively. He picked up the ring and the pen. Before his eyes flashed the image from 9 years ago, kneeling to propose to her with this very ring, and the scene of their hasty but grandiose wedding in Lake Tahoe, sliding the ring onto her left ring finger. That day, countless society reporters had swarmed the venue. Charlotte's father was a legendary billionaire philanthropist in New York, and Charlotte herself was a rising star, a chip off the old block. What a stunning young couple, they had said. Brooks remembered how the Wall Street tycoons in the chapel had looked at Charlotte with admiration, then turned to him. "You're a lucky kid. Heard you're a doctor." From now on, Charlotte's the one bringing home the real bacon. A man had clapped Brooks on the shoulder and chuckled. Brooks had frowned, lips pressed tightly together, unsure how to respond. He felt profoundly uncomfortable, as if in the eyes of these billionaires he wasn't worthy of Charlotte Kensington. Luckily, Charlotte had appeared swiftly. The wedding dress she wore was a one-of-a-kind, 100% handmade piece. Her father had commissioned it from the top designer in Manhattan when she turned 18. It took 3 years to make and cost millions of dollars. Uncle, don't joke around. Brooks is an incredible man. He saved me from the brink of death. Charlotte had looped her arm through Brooks. Even though she noticed the rigid tension in his body, she kept smiling. If it weren't for Dr. Harrington, you and my dad would have cried yourselves gray. Ah, on such a joyous day, why bring up such grim things? My fault, my fault. My apologies to Dr. Harrington, the middle-aged billionaire who had looked at Brooks with slight condescension just moments ago, now smiled warmly at his friend's daughter and said in a gentle voice, "Since you're married now, support each other. Don't let our Charlotte down." "I won't," Brooks had said with absolute sincerity. That day, despite the paparazzi, Not a single photo of the wedding was leaked. Charlotte had told Brooks, "I know you hate media exposure and having your private life aired out. That's why I hosted a private dinner for the editors and gave them a hefty thank you gift to kill the photos." In reality, she had made the problem disappear with massive amounts of money. Brooks knew that, but he also knew Charlotte was fiercely protecting his boundaries. At the beginning, they truly had been happy. But how had it come to this? What made Charlotte leave without a single word of warning? Standing outside the locked door of the home they had shared, Brooks ran it through his mind over and over. Was it the photo of Vanessa I didn't hide well enough, or the name I muttered in my sleep, but Charlotte had never mentioned Vanessa? He thought she was clueless. But you can't block out the sun with one finger. Brooks' yearning for another woman had been hiding in plain sight of his wife. In those moments, did Charlotte think he was a coward incapable of letting the past go? How had she endured it? Brooks desperately needed to know the answers. He found the number for Brooke Charlotte's executive assistant and dialed frantically. "I need to know where Charlotte is right now. Please tell me." His voice was practically begging, but Brooks' tone was impeccably professional. "I apologize, Mr. Harrington. I am not at liberty to disclose Miss Kensington's itinerary. And for your information, whether you ask me, her chauffeur, or any executive at the Kensington Group, we will all give you the exact same answer." With that, Brooke hung up without hesitation and blocked his number. Originally, several executives at the Kensington Group had maintained contact with Brooks, purely out of respect for Charlotte. But now that the boss had divorced him, there was no need to indulge him. Brooks knew these had to be direct orders from Charlotte. She didn't want him to find her. But Brooks didn't give up. He called the private chauffeur who often drove them only to hear the cold, automated operator. His number had been blocked there, too. Just as Brooks was hitting peak desperation, Attorney Lawson appeared before him in the lobby of the building. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington. I am the legal representative for Miss Kensington. Since your marital union has been legally dissolved, there are a few matters regarding the division of marital assets you need to be made aware of." Lawson smiled, a polite corporate smile. "Shall we find a quiet place to speak?" Brooks nodded mechanically. If he had harbored even a shred of hope that this divorce was a bluff, seeing the high-powered lawyer completely obliterated it. Charlotte truly didn't love him anymore. Attorney Lawson settled into a booth at a high-end cafe nearby, adjusted his glasses, and got straight to the point. "Mr. Harrington, you and Miss Kensington were married in Nevada. Under state law, a no-fault divorce can be pursued aggressively by one party if irreconcilable differences are cited. I want to make that perfectly clear." Then what was the specific difference she presented to the judge? A vague, sickening thought crossed Brooks' mind, but he remembered Charlotte's behavior over the past few days. She hadn't seemed to care. In that moment, Brooks realized something horrifying. Every single time Vanessa had needed him, whether he accepted instantly or hesitated and looked to Charlotte for approval, Charlotte had always smiled gently and sent her husband off with another woman. No jealousy, no envy, not even a single question about who Vanessa really was, even when she moved into their home. This reaction could only mean two things. First, Charlotte already knew Vanessa was the unforgettable first love. Second, Charlotte had already decided to stop loving him, or she was completely, utterly disappointed in him. Disappointment layered upon disappointment until she finally chose to walk away. That was why Charlotte's lack of arguments, her extreme gentleness, and her silence over the last week was actually the methodical process of her gradually detaching herself from him completely. Brooks's face turned ashen instantly. "You committed adultery, did you not?" Lawson stated without a trace of emotion. His client, Charlotte Kensington, was one of the most brilliant business minds in America. She never should have been tied to a man like this for a decade. Back to the matter at hand, Mr. Harrington. According to Miss Kensington's wishes and standard state law, with the exception of the Park Avenue penthouse, all other marital assets have been liquidated or divided down the middle. With these assets, you will be able to live an exceptionally comfortable life. Lawson handed a thick folder of documents to Brooks. "By the way, Miss Kensington has deeded an additional property to you as compensation. It's on the last page. You just need to sign the transfer deed." The property was the Upper West Side condo. Brooks was stunned for a moment. He remembered that at the very beginning of their marriage, he had desperately wanted to buy their home in that exact neighborhood. "Aside from this, she didn't leave me anything else." "Not a single word," Brooks asked. His voice choked. "The access code to the Upper West Side condo is the date of your 9th wedding anniversary. And that day also happens to be the day she discovered your infidelity." The lawyer stood up, an air of unmistakable superiority about him. Honestly, as a legal professional, he wasn't supposed to get emotionally invested in his clients, but he couldn't muster an ounce of pity for the handsome, impeccably dressed man sitting across from him. Perhaps it was the anger and sympathy he felt, recognizing Charlotte Kensington's wasted youth. But turning around and walking away now was the smartest move she ever made. Before leaving, Lawson looked down at a devastated Brooks and said calmly, "Miss, Kensington asked me to wish you a happy birthday. This apartment and the divorce decree are her final gifts to you. Final, final." Brooks repeated that word in his mind. They had once sworn before God to be together for a lifetime, but barely into their 9th year, he had made an irreparable mistake and lost the Charlotte who loved him the most. Brooks walked out of the cafe as if his very soul had been ripped from his body. He didn't know how passers-by would describe the look on his face, but it was undoubtedly pathetic. On a day with brilliant sunshine, he felt a coldness that pierced straight to his bones. The saying goes, the one who truly wants to leave picks a morning with a gentle breeze, and bright sunshine puts on their most ordinary coat, quietly closes the door and vanishes. It was a perfect description of his reality. Brooks smiled in self-mockery and hailed a random cab. The destination, the Upper West Side. Upper West Side. 9th wedding anniversary. The CEO away on a business trip discovers his infidelity. As he punched in the code, Brooks remembered Attorney Lawson's words. He couldn't recall exactly what Vanessa had been doing in the penthouse that specific day, but regardless, he was the one at fault, opening the door. Brooks was struck entirely speechless. Everything before his eyes was decorated exactly to his personal taste. Walls lined with custom bookshelves for his medical journals, vibrant indoor plants. On the sleek coffee table sat the book he hadn't finished reading at the Park Avenue penthouse. The cat-shaped metal bookmark poking out from the pages was a gift Charlotte had bought him. If he didn't know Charlotte was gone, Brooks would have thought this was the home they had lived in together for the past 9 years. "Charlotte, I'm sorry." Touching the metal bookmark, he finally couldn't stop his eyes from turning red. But it was too late. "Brooks, I'm sorry. I feel like you don't reject me anymore. Have you fallen for me a little? Not just like, but love." Ah, but Brooks' liking isn't loving. 2 people who don't love each other shouldn't get married. Charlotte's voice echoed in his ears. What had she actually said? And what was merely an auditory hallucination manufactured by his intense guilt, arranged neatly on the console table, were all the gifts she had given him over the years. "Charlotte, happy birthday." Brooks had given Charlotte pearl earrings, a mood lamp, an artsy quartz clock, and 2 tickets to a John Mayer concert. The combined monetary value of those gifts didn't even amount to a fraction of what she casually gifted him without a second thought. But Charlotte had said, "Brooks, I don't need expensive gifts. I just want your sincerity." Back then, Brooks had been sincere. He was sincere when picking them out and gifting them. He had surrendered his heart a long time ago. "Happy anniversary. I hope we're together forever." Brooks looked at the preserved floral arrangement he had given Charlotte and remembered his wish from that year. But preserved flowers only last 3 years. "I'm so sorry," Brooks whispered into the empty room. At that moment, Vanessa's phone calls started blowing up his phone. For the first time, Brooks felt a visceral wave of revulsion. He didn't want to answer, but Vanessa was relentlessly persistent. She would hang up and immediately call back. Brooks finally answered. "Vanessa, what is it? I'm a bit busy right now." On the other end, Vanessa paused. It was the first time Brooks had ever treated her with such icy detachment. Before she could speak, he continued. "Vanessa, we've made a mistake. Or maybe it was just me who made the mistake. I should have told you earlier, but I am a married man. My feelings for Charlotte aren't just a habit. It's love. I can't leave her." Brooks was rambling. The situation was already at rock bottom. The physical distance gave him the courage to finally speak the truth. "There shouldn't be any more contact between us. Vanessa, what ended when we were teenagers needs to stay completely in the past." Barely had Brooks finished when Vanessa frantically cut in. "Brooks, what are you saying? How could you love someone like Charlotte Kensington? She's just a vain, materialistic woman. Vanessa, is there some sort of misunderstanding?" Brooks sounded genuinely confused. "There's no misunderstanding, Brooks. I don't know why you're acting like this right now, but don't let her fool you. We are soulmates. You have me in your heart. We were so happy before. You can't really just end things like this." On the other end of the line, Vanessa was practically sobbing, her voice dripping with pathetic desperation. Brooks said nothing. After a long silence, he spoke. "Vanessa, there are things best cleared up in person. Okay, Vanessa agreed immediately. I'll come to the Park Avenue penthouse. No, that is Charlotte's house. Not mine, Brooks stated factually. What, you gave her the penthouse, Brooks? Why are you being so stupid? Tossing her a little cash in the divorce would have been enough. Real estate on Park Avenue costs a fortune. Vanessa's voice suddenly spiked in pitch. Brooks frowned deeply. Vanessa, meet me at the cafe downstairs from the hospital. He suspected something ugly, but he didn't want to interrogate her over the phone. Some things had to be seen face to face. Lenox Medical Center, the Reserve Cafe. Brooks arrived half an hour early. It was an old habit of his. Thinking of habits, his mind immediately went back to Charlotte. Brooks, why do you have to be so rigidly punctual about everything? He had answered coldly. I don't like anything escaping my control. In other words, you hate the unknown and the unexpected. Even physical contact, Charlotte had blushed slightly, asking shyly. He had answered with the same frigid tone, but the Brooks of back then didn't know that Charlotte was the most unknown and unexpected variable of his life, and he had hopelessly, irrevocably fallen in love with that surprise. Brooks, did you wait long? Vanessa arrived in a rush. She was late. Brooks raised his wrist to check the time. This watch had also been a gift from Charlotte. A Patek Philippe from the Grand Complications line valued at over $100,000. For our great doctor who values time as gold, I'm gifting you a watch so you'll think of me every time you check the time. Charlotte's laughter echoed in his ears. Brooks. Vanessa waved a hand in front of his face. Brooks snapped back to reality, bit his lip, and frowned slightly. How did you know Charlotte and I got divorced? It was something he had only just found out himself today. Vanessa hadn't expected Brooks to be so dangerously direct. She hesitated for a second, then gritting her teeth confessed, I told her to divorce you. You don't love her and she doesn't deserve you. Brooks' blood ran cold. It turned out Vanessa had been the mastermind behind the final blow. He couldn't comprehend it. How could the dream girl of his teenage years do something so vile? He smiled bitterly. You've really misunderstood everything. Under Vanessa's perplexed gaze, Brooks's voice grew hoarse. Charlotte is the one with a net worth in the billions. She is the CEO of the Kensington Group. The Park Avenue penthouse was hers from the very beginning. He remembered the comment Vanessa made on the phone. What Vanessa couldn't accept those words. Don't joke around, Brooks. I'm dead serious. You know me. I don't lie. Brooks' expression was stone cold. How is that possible? How could Charlotte Kensington be the CEO of the Kensington Group? She was just a stay-at-home wife you were providing for. Vanessa shook her head, utterly incredulous. Brooks, you're messing with me, right? I love you with or without money. I love you. Nervous Vanessa reached out to grab his hand, but he dodged it smoothly. Vanessa, I'm just a doctor. I'm not the billionaire you imagined. Impossible. Vanessa still refused to believe it. She looked Brooks up and down. Your watch, your bespoke, suit your shoes. Just this outfit costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And all the society columns in New York called you a low-profile golden bachelor, the wealthiest star surgeon at Lenox. Before coming back to the States, Vanessa had done extensive prep work. She had researched her ex-boyfriend thoroughly. Brooks's stats were top-tier, handsome, tall. Even though he was a surgeon at a private hospital, the wealth he casually displayed was staggering. Vanessa had read numerous articles about him. Aside from praising his exceptional surgical skills, the pieces always highlighted his attire. The watch, the tie, the shoes, the cufflinks, any single item was worth a fortune, not to mention the exotic cars he swapped out frequently. Brooks, are you mad because I went to see Charlotte and told her to divorce you? I know it was wrong, but I did it for your own good. I didn't want to see you suffer with someone who doesn't love you. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, her expression the picture of sincerity. I love Charlotte, Brooks finally said after a long silence. I love her. It's not that I don't love her, he repeated with absolute firmness. Vanessa froze as if struck by lightning. Brooks, you. Vanessa. I am just a doctor at Lenox Medical. All the extraordinary material wealth you saw was given to me by Charlotte. Simply put, for the past 9 years I have been living off her dime. Do you understand? Reaching this point, Brooks accepted reality with bizarre calmness. He had originally received Charlotte's meticulous care and unconditional love, but his own fragile ego had prevented him from publicly acknowledging it. Brooks looked at Vanessa with serene detachment. I don't know what your true intentions were when you went looking for Charlotte, but taking you in wasn't because I still loved you. It was purely out of wounded pride, resentment over you abandoning me in the past. He smiled bitterly. Do you remember how we started? Vanessa was stunned. Their meeting and romance in high school had been entirely orchestrated by her. How could he know everything, Vanessa? I don't intend to dig up the past. On the contrary, I couldn't care less about what happened back then. Brooks frowned. What I want to know is what else you've done since you came back this time. He lowered his gaze. I shouldn't have felt pity for you. I shouldn't have brought you home. I shouldn't have felt nostalgic for a fake past. This is all my fault. But Brooks's gaze sharpened and his tone dropped to freezing. Tell me what other lies you've spun and what else you did to Charlotte, with her carefully crafted fantasy shattered. Vanessa felt utterly lost, cornered by guilt. She didn't dare look Brooks in the eye. I only advised her to divorce you. I answered a couple of your phone calls and made it sound like we were sleeping together. Even now, Vanessa harbored a sliver of hope. Even if all that money was Charlotte's in a divorce, Brooks would surely get a massive settlement. It was money someone like her could never earn in a lifetime. Plus, Brooks was a top surgeon at Lenox. His base salary was in the high six figures, not counting bonuses. Even if it was less than billions, it was enough for a luxurious life. Brooks, I was wrong, but Charlotte doesn't want you anymore, and you're already divorced. Before Vanessa could finish, Brooks cut her off, his expression filled with disgust. He was profoundly disappointed. Vanessa, how could you change so much? Or, is this who the Vanessa I knew always was? Brooks' question caused the facade Vanessa was desperately maintaining to collapse entirely. Change, I've always been like this. You knew that, knowing that you still pined for me for 10 years after I went to study abroad. What right do you have to lecture me? Vanessa sneered. After getting the red rose, you couldn't forget the white moonlight. Now that the red rose has dumped you and flown far away, you call me despicable and shameless Brooks. The truth is, the most cowardly and despicable one here is you. You hurt Charlotte. You didn't know how to value her. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. Vanessa's screaming left Brooks's mind entirely blank. He knew that from any objective standpoint, her words were completely true. Brooks, I severely misjudged you. I thought you were a billionaire, but in the end, you were just a well-kept toy for Charlotte Kensington. Listen to me clearly. Pay me $1 million in 3 days. If you don't, I'll go straight to the hospital board and tell them everything. Since she had lost face completely, Vanessa decided to go all in. She smiled a toxic, charming smile. You wouldn't want people to know you're a piece of trash who plays with women's feelings and lives a double life, would you? But Brooks didn't react. If you want to go, go. I've done everything I possibly could for you. He looked at her coldly, like a complete stranger. Then he stood up without hesitation. I was wrong. Charlotte leaving me is already my punishment. If heaven thinks that isn't enough, I'm willing to endure more. As for you, Vanessa Brooks looked at her with a trace of pity. You reap what you sow. There are no shortcuts in this world. That was the last piece of advice he gave her. Whatever Vanessa did no longer mattered to him. He only wanted to find Charlotte, quickly beg for her forgiveness, plead for mercy, do whatever it took. Meanwhile, at Heathrow Airport in London, the moment she stepped off the plane, Charlotte received a warm hug from her friend Oliver. He was a British-American expat, so his accent was an endearing transatlantic mix. Charlotte, you finally decided to move to London. We're going to make an absolute killing here. Charlotte smiled faintly. Sure, you eat the prime rib and I get the crumbs. I'm counting on you. What are you saying, Charlotte? If we found this firm together now that you're here, obviously half is yours. I've been miserable without you, Oliver played the victim dramatically. Charlotte couldn't help but laugh. All right. I'll tell Brooke to assign some of my best people to you, but I can't take half. I've just moved the global HQ and I'll be drowning in work. Good Lord, Charlotte, you made such a massive decision behind my back. And what about your husband, that guy? What's his name? Oliver winked playfully. I divorced him. I'm single now. Saying it out loud with such calm, Charlotte felt no pain. When you truly stop loving someone, it isn't as agonizing as it seems. Some people are like a splinter buried deep in your palm. For fear of the pain, you don't dare pull it out, and over time, the wound only festers. Once you finally make up your mind and rip it out, the palm stops hurting and the tiny puncture heals slowly until you can neither see nor feel it anymore. Charlotte looked up at the London sky. Brooks, I don't know if you were slightly happy or slightly sad receiving those divorce papers, but to me, it doesn't matter anymore. I won't rejoice in your happiness, nor will I sorrow in your grief. I am just me, Charlotte Kensington. Brooks, I hope you suffer the way I once suffered. Charlotte, now that you're single, I'm going to introduce you to some incredibly handsome blokes. Brits, Americans, you name it. Oliver grabbed her arm excitedly. Fine, Charlotte agreed. She had to keep moving forward, and of course, she needed to meet new people. That night, under the neon lights of Soho, she sang and partied to her heart's content. The next morning in the Upper West Side condo, Brooks tossed and turned, dreaming countless dreams all about Charlotte, both joyful and tragic. The person he used to see the moment he opened his eyes could now only be found in his dreams. Brooks tried contacting every mutual friend of Charlotte's he knew, but they all kept completely silent about her whereabouts. Brooks, leave her alone. She deserves someone better. You aren't in her league, one friend said ruthlessly before hanging up. Massaging his temples, Brooks prepared to take a shower. Suddenly his phone rang. It was the hospital. Brooks frowned and answered. A breathless voice came through. Dr. Harrington, something terrible has happened. Get to the hospital immediately. Hearing this, Brooks's frown deepened. He showered in a rush and drove straight to Lenox Medical Center. Dr. Harrington, you're finally here. A nurse he knew greeted him with a smile more forced than a grimace. Did a patient cause trouble? Brooks couldn't help but remember Vanessa's threat from yesterday. Had she really come to the hospital to expose him? No, it's not that. The nurse hesitated and shook her head. Then what is it? Brooks hated these situations where he was the only one in the dark while everyone else beat around the bush. The nurse shifted her weight nervously. You'll find out when you go to the Chief of Medicine's office. With that, she scurried away. Chief of Medicine's office. Are you saying you're firing me? Brooks sat across from the hospital director. In front of him sat a steaming cup of artisan coffee, but an icy chill seemed to radiate from it. Ah, Brooks, you're a young man. Don't be so dramatic. The board just wants to give you a rest. It's merely a 6-month sabbatical. The director was smiling, but his words hid an undeniable rejection. Brooks bit his lip. I've never heard of an attending surgeon taking a 6-month mandatory leave without cause. The director adjusted his thick glasses. Do you really have to force me to be blunt? He looked at Brooks. You're young and highly capable, that's true. But Lenox Medical is a business. We can't afford to keep someone like you afloat on our own. Before Miss Kensington was backing you, the imported surgical robots, the experimental drug trials, she secured all of it. Since the topic had been broached, the director decided to lay it all out. Brooks, to be entirely honest, your personality is better suited for a research lab, not patient care. Now that Miss Kensington has pulled her massive investments, a lot of board members have raised suggestions. And I can't turn my back on the entire hospital just for you, can I? Brooks remained silent. Much later he asked, What do you mean about Miss Kensington? The director sighed heavily. You really didn't know anything, did you? When you first arrived at this hospital as a hotshot resident, Miss Kensington signed a massive partnership agreement with us. Of course, that was just the front. In reality, she was quietly funneling us cutting-edge European equipment and rare pharmaceuticals. The director paused. She asked for absolutely nothing in return. Only that under any and all circumstances we kept you employed here, Brooks. Miss Kensington held you in the highest regard. To us, having a star surgeon like you at Lenox was an honor, but if we've reached the prestige we have today, it is entirely thanks to her. The director took a sip of his coffee and said sincerely, If you ever get the chance, thank her on my behalf. Yes, I will. Brooks smiled a fragile smile and bit his lip, but in his heart he knew there would be no more chances. He couldn't even find Charlotte. Thank you to the board and my colleagues for your care over the years. Brooks stood up and bowed deeply to the director. He didn't touch a single drop of that coffee. After leaving the director's office, Brooks went straight to his own. He had worked at Lenox Medical Center for 8 years, and during those 8 years, Charlotte had silently managed everything for him behind the scenes. Her love was never expressed in loud declarations, but it was steeped in every microscopic detail of his life. Brooks looked around his office. Charlotte does love, not require a response from the other person. How did you endure all these years? But he was only talking to himself. The butterfly fish in the glass tank continued swimming freely. They had no idea that the two people who bought them together had already completely severed ties. Can a shattered mirror ever be put back together? Who knows? Brooks called a moving company to clear out his office. Dr. Harrington, you're still going to treat patients right. Several patients approached when they heard the commotion. They all seemed reluctant to see him go. Even though Brooks was cold and notoriously uncommunicative, his skills were unparalleled. Yes, I will. Brooks managed a smile. Don't worry, I'll return to the scalpel. After finding Charlotte, after confessing my love and receiving her forgiveness, right now he truly needed a break. He needed to severely reevaluate himself. Brooks returned to his Upper West Side condo and didn't step outside for days. He barely ate, submerging himself entirely in sleep. He asked almost everyone he knew who had ties to Charlotte, but they all maintained their silence. It was the first time Brooks had ever experienced such crushing frustration in his life. He could only keep sleeping to anesthetize the pain. Only in dreams could he meet Charlotte. "Brooks, what were you like in high school? I want to see what you looked like as a student." In the dream, Charlotte was curled up in his arms. They were basking in the sun while flipping through a thick photo album. It was filled with all the photos they had taken together over 10 years. "Brooks, I wish we had met earlier. We would have fallen in love faster." Charlotte's eyes sparkled. She looked at him with eyes brimming with absolute adoration. But in the dream, he remained silent, an endless, suffocating silence. Charlotte's gaze gradually darkened, revealing profound disappointment. "Brooks, you never loved me. If you couldn't forget Vanessa, why did you propose to me?" Her voice turned hysterical and agonizing. "Isn't that right, Brooks?" Brooks screamed and woke up, drenched in cold sweat. All around him there was only the chill of an empty apartment. There was no trace of Charlotte, neither her joy nor her pain. Brooks lowered his head, utterly powerless. He felt like he was going to lose his mind to this grief, but he knew this wasn't even 1,000th of the pain Charlotte had suffered in the past. He had to endure it all. Suddenly his phone rang, an unknown number. A spark of desperate hope flared in Brooks's chest. Could it be Charlotte answering it? He heard Vanessa's terrified voice. "Brooks, save me." Brooks frowned deeply. He couldn't understand why Vanessa was so relentlessly parasitic. He had already deleted all her social media accounts and blocked her number. "Miss Caldwell, if you're in trouble, you should call the police, not your ex-boyfriend." Brooks was certain Vanessa was playing the same old manipulative game. "No," Vanessa shrieked. "Brooks, only you can save me. They're coming after me. They want to throw me in prison. They want to kill me." She was rambling hysterically. Brooks found it utterly absurd. "Brooks, I know you don't believe me anymore, but this time it's real. If you don't help me, I'll have no choice but to kill myself. If you don't believe me, look at the news. They've exposed everything." Vanessa's voice faded as if it took all her strength just to speak. Brooks opened his laptop and went straight to the breaking news sites. The Black Widow of high society. A stolen life finally pays the price. Fake Ivy League degrees, the downfall of Vanessa Caldwell, professional gold digger. He clicked on a random viral video. Mountains of evidence published by the furious wives of numerous victims had surfaced disgusting text logs, intimate selfies. There was even a 10-second dashcam video of a wealthy wife catching Vanessa in the act of infidelity. The more he watched, the more horrifying it became. Brooks' expression turned increasingly glacial. So, the person he had desperately pined for all those years was actually this kind of monster. Now, even his teenage feelings felt like a pathetic waste. "Vanessa, so from beginning to end, I was just another one of your marks." People are like that. They ask questions already knowing the answer, as if only by hitting absolute rock bottom can they finally surrender completely. "I'm sorry, Brooks. I know I hurt you both, but it was the only way I could live like you people." Vanessa sobbed through the phone. "I don't understand. Why are some people born on Park Avenue while I, who finally clawed my way to some money and status, have to be thrown back to the gutter I worked so hard? I just wanted the life I deserved." Brooks couldn't stomach Vanessa's twisted, absurd logic any longer. He asked coldly, "Do you really not understand what you did wrong, Brooks? You people born with silver spoons don't get it. You were born with privilege. Your family wealth is passed down generation after generation." "I had nothing," Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Did you truly have nothing?" Vanessa Brooks asked suddenly. Vanessa paused. "You were beautiful since you were a child. Your father was a bank manager. You had a good life. In the end, you even got a full scholarship to study abroad. You already had so much more than the majority of people on Earth. How can you say you had nothing?" Brooks listed Vanessa's advantages. Perhaps that was why he had liked her in high school. But all of that was in the past. Vanessa had mutated over time until she was entirely unrecognizable. "Brooks, sometimes I really envy you." Vanessa's voice on the phone was thick with despair. "Your utter purity makes me feel the injustice of this world even more. Those advantages you mentioned, to me they were all chains. Sins." Vanessa let out a light, hollow laugh. "Brooks, anyway, right now only you can help me. Please, help me one last time." Brooks felt for the first time that trying to understand each other was impossible. Perhaps they had never truly looked in the same direction. "Vanessa, I cannot help you. Everyone must be held accountable for their actions. Whatever your intentions were wrong is wrong." Brooks gripped his phone tight. "Brooks, Vanessa's voice was pure begging, but this time Brooks didn't soften. If you've made a mistake, you must take responsibility. It was a lesson both Brooks and Vanessa needed to learn. Vanessa, you still have a chance to turn yourself in. Don't keep going down the wrong path. One mistake just leads to another. With that, Brooks hung up decisively. The next wave of news about Vanessa arrived 2 days later. Brooks had been sending messages every single day to Charlotte's private Instagram account. He always received the same automated notification, error sending message. Please add this contact first. But right then, a news alert popped up on his screen. A prestigious British university had formally revoked Vanessa Caldwell's master's degree and scrubbed her from their distinguished alumni list. Following that was a tearful apology video posted by Vanessa. In the video, she looked incredibly haggard. She spoke earnestly, completely makeup-free, but the vast majority of the public didn't buy it. Vanessa hadn't just destroyed one family, she had wrecked dozens. Brooks turned off his phone. He sat by the living room window. Next to him was the round glass tank, and inside, the 2 butterfly fish had grown noticeably larger. They still swam together like a shadow, deeply affectionate. Brooks couldn't help but remember the day they bought them. Suddenly, he wanted to re-walk the path he had taken with Charlotte. He wanted to go back to the platform at Montauk Station. Meanwhile, in London, Charlotte had just wrapped up a brutal negotiation. The old-money British tycoons had vastly underestimated her because of her beautiful, unfamiliar face, and especially because she was a young American woman. But it was precisely this woman, Charlotte Kensington, who, leading an elite corporate team armed with exhaustive preparation, drafting proposals day and night, relentlessly networking, had finally dominated the boardroom and secured the prep deal. It was a massive plot of prime real estate in central London. Charlotte planned to develop a luxury apartment complex specifically geared toward American expat students and young professionals. Miss Kensington, I didn't expect a woman with such delicate features to possess such a cutthroat instinct. Are all American women as stunning and formidable as you? A British aristocrat stopped Charlotte, making no effort to hide his admiration. Charlotte smiled faintly. Yes, not just the women, all of us. When we want something, we take it. Then, may I buy you dinner? The conquest in the aristocrat's eyes was glaringly obvious. Charlotte shook her head. I apologize. As you know, I am incredibly busy with the launch of this project. With that, she walked away with her secretary, but after a few steps, she turned back. When these apartments are finished, I'll buy you a drink. She smiled over her shoulder, radiating the undeniable charm of an American powerhouse. And not far away, a financial journalist captured that exact moment forever. Charlotte returned to her sprawling townhouse in Kensington. Opening the door, 2 massive dogs charged at her excitedly, a golden retriever and a Samoyed. Having her own dogs had always been Charlotte's dream. In the past, because of Brooks's severe germophobia, she hadn't even dared mention it. But after securing her freedom, the very first thing she did was adopt them. The desires they couldn't fulfill together, she now easily fulfilled alone. Happiness could be that simple. Miss Charlotte, I've baked a warm apple cobbler. Go wash your hands and come have a taste, said Martha in a warm, motherly voice. She was the housekeeper who had watched Charlotte grow up. Yes, Martha, come eat with me. Charlotte patted the 2 dogs and looked up with a bright smile. Charlotte's mother had passed away when she was 3. All her memories of maternal love had been provided by Martha. After her father's death, Charlotte had tried multiple times to move Martha into the Park Avenue penthouse, but the older woman always refused. Miss, you have your own family now. The most important thing is living well with your husband. It doesn't matter where I live as long as you're happy. Even when Charlotte insisted Martha would only agree to visit occasionally to help clean or cook. Even then, Brooks had been noticeably irritated. He never explicitly said it, but Charlotte, who loved him so deeply, how could she not feel it? Brooks hated having his hyper-sanitized private space invaded by strangers, especially someone lower class like Martha. Eventually, Martha stopped coming to the penthouse altogether. Miss, I know you want to take care of me, but I don't want to cause friction in your marriage. Charlotte had no choice but to buy Martha a beautiful house in a quiet Connecticut suburb and visit her occasionally. Because Martha had dedicated her entire life to serving the Kensington family for Charlotte's sake, never marrying or having children of her own. Sitting at the dining table with Martha eating the steaming cobbler, Charlotte suddenly felt the true warmth of a home. She repeated to herself, don't compare, don't compare. You were happy by his side too. But she knew that happiness was just her own fantasy, a completely one-sided delusion. Martha, do you think it would be all right if I lived alone my whole life, just like you? Charlotte asked without realizing it. Her gaze rested on Martha's clear, though aging eyes. Martha paused for a moment, then smiled softly. Her eyes were brimming with love. Of course. Whatever you want to do is perfectly fine. You can choose any life you want, and you aren't alone. You have me. Hearing this, Charlotte smiled, a smile mixed with tears. Charlotte would soon turn 30. In this short life, she had rebelled, she had done crazy things, she had bet everything she had on love. She thought her life was already perfect, but now she saw that this exact moment was true perfection. Her business was booming globally. She had her dogs by her side, people who loved her unconditionally, and great friends. She had achieved a life of total freedom, bound to no one and nothing. Miss, don't cry. If Mr. Kensington saw you suffering, it would break his heart. Martha stood up and gently hugged Charlotte. Your life is only going to get better. We are all right here with you. That night, Charlotte slept incredibly well. It was the best sleep she'd had in years. She dreamed of her parents. They were holding hands, smiling down at her. Charlotte, Mom and Dad are so proud of you. We'll watch over you from heaven and bless you until you are truly, completely happy. According to our London correspondent, the young American CEO Charlotte Kensington has successfully acquired 15 acres of prime real estate in central London. She plans to construct a luxury apartment complex geared toward American expats and international students. On a massive jumbotron in Times Square, a financial news anchor was reporting the latest global market updates. Our correspondent sat down for an exclusive interview with Miss Kensington. Now, America, let's hear it for this exceptional trailblazer. Below the glowing screens in front of laptops and TVs across the country, people were praising Charlotte's massive win. The housing crisis for international students had always been a major issue. Now that there was a dedicated complex in London, other cities might follow suit. Charlotte had said as much in the interview. Currently, our group's focus is aggressively expanding overseas, including the UK, Japan, and several European markets. It's a tremendous honor to contribute even modestly to the bright young minds representing our country abroad. Charlotte, wearing a sleek, cream-colored power suit, looked intellectual, fierce, and utterly professional. And what about your philanthropic efforts back in the States? A reporter asked. The charity funds, the educational grants, the youth support programs in inner cities, all of those domestic social initiatives will continue at full force. Also, since I recently adopted 2 dogs, I'm currently looking into funding a national animal rescue initiative. Charlotte smiled brightly at the camera. If any no-kill shelters need corporate backing, they can contact the Kensington Group's New York HQ directly. We will review every proposal and carefully craft a support plan. Brooks, who was about to descend into the subway station, snapped his head up at the sound of that impossibly familiar voice and froze. Countless commuters shoved past him. Someone even shoulder-checked him hard by mistake, but he didn't react. Charlotte, finally seeing the person he had desperately yearned for day and night, Brooks almost broke down in tears right there on the sidewalk. Even if it was only through a cold electronic screen, he finally knew she was okay. So this is who she really was. Brooks couldn't help but smile in bitter self-mockery. During their 9-year marriage, Charlotte had stepped back almost entirely from the Kensington Group, all for him. She stopped attending high society galas. She stopped making public appearances. She stopped giving interviews. Because he loved quiet isolation, she had forced herself to become quiet and isolated with him. That was why Brooks had completely forgotten how magnetically charismatic Charlotte was as a CEO. She was originally a proud, fiercely confident Rose. Now that he knew where Charlotte was, Brooks immediately booked a first-class ticket to London. Before leaving, he stopped by the aquarium one last time. He bought premium food for the 2 butterfly fish and upgraded them to a massive luxury tank. "Sir, you didn't bring your wife this time," the shop owner remarked while bagging the items. "I made a terrible mistake and hurt her." For some reason, faced with this shop owner he had only met once, Brooks felt a sudden urge to confess. "Oh, wow. Then you have to truly, deeply repent. Think hard about how to earn her forgiveness. It was obvious your wife loved you to death. I could see it in the way she looked at you that day. Apologize properly and win her back." The owner threw in some expensive decorative stones and aquatic plants for free. As Brooks was leaving, the owner said seriously, "Sir, there are some people in this life that if you let them go even once, you'll regret it until the day you die. I genuinely hope you don't end up regretting it. With how much your wife loves you, you absolutely cannot let her down." Brooks nodded and said with ironclad conviction, "I will win her back." Thank you. After leaving the shop, Brooks went alone to Montauk Station, watching the sea of humanity coming and going. So many people smiling as they reunited, so many sobbing as they said goodbye. Brooks finally understood why Charlotte's expression had been so profoundly tragic that day. The end of the line. A place for goodbyes where paths never cross again. That day, she was already saying her final goodbye to him. After a grueling transatlantic flight, he finally landed at Heathrow Airport. Brooks had barely slept 3 hours on the plane. The rest of the time, he stared blankly at the clouds out the window. His mind was consumed by the image of Charlotte. As the flight progressed, the physical distance shortened, but Brooks' heart grew increasingly anxious, even terrified. During those brief 3 hours of sleep, he had strange, fragmented dreams. In one dream, Brooks honestly confessed his lingering feelings for Vanessa to Charlotte while they were still dating. Charlotte told him, "I'm sorry, but I can't accept someone who has another woman taking up space in his heart." "Okay, I'll empty my heart completely and learn to love only you," Brooks replied. "I won't wait for you forever, so you have to hurry," Charlotte said softly. He nodded and kept saying, "Okay." The scene shifted. Brooks was 17 again. A new transfer student walked into his AP Bio class. She introduced herself as Charlotte. He fell in love with her at first sight. He brought her breakfast every day, helped her study, and walked her home in silence. At graduation, he confessed, "I've been in love with you for a long time. Give me a chance." She smiled like a drifting cloud, like a warm summer breeze. "Okay, Brooks, I'll give you a chance." She stepped closer to him. He smelled the scent of orange blossoms. "I'll give you the chance to love me." Brooks woke up right at that moment. He checked his phone. It was 4:48 p.m. On his lock screen, Charlotte was smiling like a blooming flower. Brooks smiled weakly. "Charlotte, this time I will be the one to love you." Stepping out of Heathrow, the wind whipped a freezing rain against his face. It was pouring in London. Brooks reached out a hand. The raindrops slammed into his palm. Without him realizing it, summer had passed and autumn had quietly arrived. The Four Seasons Hotel in Mayfair, London. Staring out at the London skyline through the rain, Brooks realized that the UK was massive, and he still didn't know Charlotte's exact location. Was this all just a fool's errand? Brooks didn't sleep a wink that night. At that exact hour, Charlotte was stressing over what to wear to a high society gala. Oliver was hosting a massive networking event at the Savoy Hotel. He had invited Europe's elite business tycoons. Burberry, Tiffany, YSL, and Chanel had sent their latest haute couture gowns directly to Charlotte's townhouse, but neither she nor Martha could find anything suitable. In the end, Charlotte selected a custom pale green Burberry gown. With her hair elegantly pinned up by Martha using a vintage jade hairpin, she perfectly fused classic aristocratic elegance with modern boardroom power. "I haven't seen you this dressed up in ages." "You look breathtaking," Miss Martha praised sincerely. Charlotte looked at herself in the full-length mirror, slightly dazed. She had simply reverted back to who she was always meant to be. 8:10 p.m. The Savoy Hotel. The moment Charlotte stepped out of her chauffeured Rolls-Royce, she was assaulted by a storm of camera flashes. It was a grand entrance Oliver had orchestrated on purpose. "Charlotte, how does it feel to be an absolute superstar walking down the red carpet?" Charlotte looped her arm through Oliver's. "Did you force everyone else to do this too?" Charlotte joked. "God, no. Just for you. The other billionaires wanted to punch me," Oliver feigned offense. Barely had they entered the glittering ballroom when a young man with jet-black hair, piercing blue eyes, broad shoulders, and impossibly long legs approached Charlotte. "Good evening, Miss Kensington. Would you do me the honor of being my partner tonight?" Surprisingly, his American accent was flawless. Charlotte's interest was piqued instantly. "Of course. And what is your name?" She placed her hand in his large, warm palm. "Liam Montgomery." The answer was crisp and confident. "All right, Mr. Montgomery." They joined hands and glided onto the dance floor. Oliver stamped his foot in mock outrage, shouting over the orchestra, "Charlotte, don't ditch your best mate for a pretty face," but after yelling, he smiled in deep satisfaction. As a true friend, he wanted nothing more than to see Charlotte find happiness again. After a waltz, Charlotte and Liam stepped out onto the terrace to catch their breath. The night breeze ruffled Charlotte's hair. Liam took a half step closer and gently tucked a stray strand behind her ear. Charlotte didn't pull away. The distance between them instantly became intimate and electric. Right at that moment, an incredulous, shattered voice cut through the air. "Charlotte!" Charlotte turned her head slightly and saw the exact person who should not be there. Her expression remained entirely serene. She smiled a faint, polite smile. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington. How have you been?" Liam's gaze shifted to the man who had suddenly appeared out of the shadows. He frowned slightly. His deep blue eyes locked onto Charlotte. "Miss Kensington, do you know this?" Gentleman Charlotte nodded without hesitation and answered with brutal frankness. "He is my ex-husband from the States." "Ah," Liam said, as if instantly understanding the gravity of the situation. "A ghost from the past." "Yes," Charlotte replied courteously. "I think you'll have to excuse us for a moment. It seems he has something he needs to say to me." "Understood." Liam smiled like a perfect gentleman and stepped away quietly, but after a few paces he turned back. "Miss Kensington, you'll still be my partner for the next dance, right?" Charlotte couldn't help but smile genuinely. "Of course. We're partners tonight, aren't we?" Getting his affirmative answer, Liam walked away satisfied. Only as he brushed past a deathly pale Brooks, he whispered, "You've already lost her mate." Those words made Brooks physically flinch, his face turning a shade paler. "How did you get here?" Charlotte looked at Brooks, the way one looks at a complete stranger, with total unnerving calm. "I came to find you, Charlotte." Brooks barely managed a smile. He tried to take a step closer, but when he was about 3 feet away, she held up a hand to stop him. "We are divorced. It would be best to maintain an appropriate social distance," Charlotte pointed out the space between them. Her expression was noble and freezing cold. "Now tell me, how did you find me?" Hearing this, Brooks felt his blood turn to ice. He smiled bitterly. 2 hours earlier at the Four Seasons Hotel, Brooks had opened his laptop. He remembered that several of his pre-med buddies from college had launched tech startups in London. Maybe they could give him the address of the Kensington Group's new UK headquarters. Clinging to that desperate hope, Brooks called one of them. "Dude, Brooks, what do I owe the pleasure? Haha, just kidding. Tell me what you need. If I can help, it's done." This fraternity brother had always been overly enthusiastic. You could say he was Brooks's best friend from undergrad. So Brooks, after hesitating for a second, spoke. "Do you know where the Kensington Group HQ is?" He paused, then added, "Or, do you know Charlotte Kensington? Charlotte Kensington, the CEO? How the hell do you know her?" The friend asked, wildly curious. "It's a long story. Well, you'll have to tell me over beers when you have time, but from the sound of it, you're here in London." The friend wouldn't stop talking. Brooks couldn't find an opening to interrupt. "I've only seen Miss Kensington once at a tech summit, but I've grabbed drinks a few times with a buddy of hers. He told me he's hosting a massive gala tonight at the Savoy Hotel. Huge mix of British aristocrats, American tech bros, you name it." The friend paused. "He actually sent me an invite, but I'm swamped with coding tonight and can't go. If you want to crash it, I can courier the VIP pass to you. Where are you staying?" "Thank you." Brooks gave him the address of the Four Seasons. He thought he truly had no destiny left with Charlotte, but unexpectedly a door had opened. "Don't mention it, we're brothers. You probably don't even remember, but sophomore year when I had that massive epileptic seizure at the frat house, you saved my life. And you, with your insane germophobia, I threw up all over you, drooled on you, the works." Brooks was stunned. If the friend hadn't brought it up, he genuinely would have forgotten entirely. "It's water under the bridge. I owe you for tonight. When I have time, dinner is on me," Brooks said seriously. After the call, Brooks rushed to Savile Row, bought a bespoke tuxedo off the rack, and hired a private car to take him to the Savoy. From the moment Charlotte walked in, his eyes hadn't left her. Elegant, confident, blindingly radiant, half the eyes in the ballroom were glued to her. Brooks felt for the very first time a surge of toxic, consuming jealousy. When the dark-haired, blue-eyed man invited Charlotte to dance, Brooks almost lost his mind. He didn't want to ruin such a hard-fought reunion, which was why he had restrained himself until now. But the Charlotte standing in front of him clearly didn't need him anymore. Not even a little bit. "Charlotte, I was wrong. I'm so sorry." But Charlotte, without waiting for Brooks to finish, cut him off. She looked at him in silence. They hadn't seen each other in over a month, and Brooks looked like he had lost 10 pounds. Their mutual acquaintances had already relayed his pathetic situation to her. He was no longer working at Lenox Medical Center. He hadn't left his apartment in weeks. Despite being rejected, ignored, and mocked, he kept desperately trying to find her. Brooks had always claimed it was just habit, that he didn't truly love Charlotte. But after losing her, he seemed to have finally woken up. He threw away his massive ego and humiliated himself just to track her down. However, a belated realization cannot cure 10 years of deep lacerations. Charlotte wouldn't be moved. She only felt he was a nuisance. "Brooks, we are divorced. Your apology means absolutely nothing to me." Charlotte's voice remained soft. But that softness almost made Brooks burst into tears. I know, Charlotte. Not everything can be forgiven with a simple, I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just felt I had to apologize in person. Brooks smiled a gutted, bitter smile. Actually, when we first met, you weren't the only one who fell in love at first sight. But I was blinded by a pathetic yearning for the past. Maybe it was because of my fragile ego. Brooks's words were slow and weighted. During his 2 days in London, he had thought obsessively about the past, the present, the future. Brooks knew, of course, that Charlotte had every right to reject him. He had hallucinated the scene of her rejecting him countless times, every time. It felt like his chest was being sawed open. It was karma. About Vanessa. I never truly got over it. I couldn't understand how her studying abroad was more important than me. It seemed like she loved me so much. That's why for so many years I couldn't let it go. And about you, Charlotte, you were so perfect. You loved me so relentlessly. Brooks felt a sharp stabbing pain in his ribs. I started taking your love for granted. I wanted to test the limits of it, to see if you would eventually leave me just like she did. But you were right. Someone who harbors another person in his heart doesn't deserve to be loved. For these past 10 years, I haven't been worthy of you. Brooks looked at Charlotte with bloodshot eyes. He knew his rambling sounded illogical and chaotic. It didn't matter if Charlotte felt confused. He was willing to spend the rest of his natural life explaining and proving himself. Charlotte, can you please give me one more chance? Brooks begged. Charlotte remained silent. She understood the twisted psychology behind Brooks's words. To him, love was a highly dangerous game. He desperately needed to prove he was worthy of being loved by forcing the people who cared about him to accept his toxicity over and over again. Therefore, even if someone proved their love repeatedly, his response was to subject them to increasingly cruel tests until the person couldn't take the abuse anymore and left. He would be in agony, but he would consider it validating. See, nobody actually loves me. This was undoubtedly rooted in Brooks's childhood trauma. Charlotte remembered that his father had been a deadbeat who abandoned the family when Brooks was young, only showing up to extort them for money. Brooks' frail mother had to become ruthless to keep them off the streets. She wanted her son to succeed more than anything, which drove her to extreme abusive parenting. Brooks grew up in that pressure cooker. First, he developed extreme OCD and misophobia, and after his first love abandoned him in high school, his avoidant attachment personality permanently solidified. Charlotte had loved Brooks once, so she understood the broken child hiding behind his words. But she could not forgive him. She was also a flesh and blood human being who needed to be loved, and who had been deeply, permanently scarred. I'm sorry, Brooks. Charlotte looked at him with eyes full of pity but no warmth. I don't want to give you that chance. Between us, there is zero possibility. Barely had she finished speaking when Brooks felt his blood freeze over a deep chill that racked his entire body. Autumn in London is so incredibly cold, he muttered to himself. Charlotte took a step closer to Brooks, closing the physical gap between them. She reached out and straightened his crooked bow tie. She said in a low, chilling voice, Brooks, our summer is over. In the future, you will meet someone who loves you. But before that happens, I highly recommend you see a psychiatrist. Charlotte took a step back. We are both adults. We both know that no one in this world is indispensable. Of course, it is exceptionally rare to find someone who loves another person as deeply as I loved you. She bit her lip and smiled a devastating smile. What I mean is, I didn't actually love you that much. Not to the point where I can't live without you. That meant he didn't need to force her to love him or pathetically try to win her back. Brooks, you are sick. Those were the final words Charlotte spoke to him. Walking past him, she felt nothing but a profound sense of relief. Upon reuniting, she truly felt zero emotional turbulence toward him. Perhaps, as she said, she really hadn't loved him that much in the end. Adults get bored. Brooks stood frozen on the terrace for a long time. A waiter asked if he needed assistance, but he only shook his head. The icy London rain soaked the lapels of his tuxedo. The autumn wind chilled him to the bone. At 30 years old, he once again felt the devastating monsoon season he had experienced at 17. Only this time, the storm was infinitely more violent. In Brooks's world, lightning struck and a hurricane made landfall. Time, like a playful puppy, sprinted forward without stopping. For 2 weeks, Charlotte didn't see Brooks again. Instead, Liam Montgomery asked her out constantly. Kensington Group UK HQ, the Shard's 68th floor. Charlotte was reviewing acquisition contracts. Brooke knocked on the door and entered. She looked slightly exasperated. Ma'am, Mr. Montgomery is here again. Why again? Just this week, Liam had already crashed the office 3 times looking for Charlotte. When he didn't physically show up, he sent absurdly massive floral arrangements, imported chocolates, or catered afternoon tea for the entire executive floor, precisely at 3:30 p.m. Charlotte couldn't help but rub her temples, tell him to come up. Honestly, Liam's aesthetics were exactly her type, but he was far too young, 10 years younger than her, a fresh Ivy League grad. Charlotte had found this out after having Brooke run a full background check on him after the gala. That night, Liam had gotten embarrassingly drunk off 3 glasses of champagne, and she had instructed her driver to drop him off at the Ritz. He was the youngest son of the Montgomery Group, a massive American conglomerate, and was currently doing a stint as a risk assessor at their London branch. Charlotte, I brought you a freshly baked matcha Basque cheesecake, Liam swaggered in. In his hand was a dainty pastel green pastry box that totally clashed with his usual tailored old money aesthetic. Thank you, but you overestimate my appetite. I just had an iced Americano. I can't eat a bite right now. Charlotte looked at Liam with fond resignation. Liam pretended not to hear her. Then I'll put it in the executive fridge for later. He winked at her. Flirting is a game knowing but pretending not to know. Not knowing but pretending to know. Seriously though, how about you poach me as your risk assessor? I'll leak all the Montgomery Group's weak spots to you. Liam planted his hands on Charlotte's desk, looking dead serious. Thank you, but I actually possess business ethics. And aren't you throwing your own family under the bus a bit too eagerly? Charlotte pointed a pen at his forehead in the air. It was undeniable. Being around this young man was effortless and comfortable. Surrounded by British aristocrats speaking in coded pleasantries and her own hyper-formal executives, Liam was surprisingly the only person Charlotte could speak to without a filter. Thinking of this, she said, I'm buying lunch today. How does that sound? You pick the restaurant. At the Four Seasons Hotel, Brooks fell severely ill the moment he returned from the gala. He spiked a high fever that refused to break. Luckily, he was a doctor and had a fully stocked medical kit in his suite. After taking a heavy dose of meds, Brooks fell into an endless, feverish sleep. He dreamed of his childhood and the rainy night he first met Charlotte. It was the genesis of his joy and his utter ruin. Brooke, you are everything to your mother, my only hope. Do you understand? How many times have I told you not to go out wandering after school? The only thing that matters is studying. Only studying can drag you out of this hellhole so you don't end up a pathetic failure like your father. Brooks, I'm sorry. Mommy loves you. I didn't mean to hit you. It was his mother. Laughing and sobbing hysterically. Brooks wanted to grab her calloused hand and tell her he was already highly successful, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach her side. He could only watch her weep. I'm sorry, Brooks. Mommy was wrong. I pressured you so hard to study that I forgot to give you the love you needed. That's why you don't know how to properly love anyone else. That's why. Brooks stood there paralyzed by the revelation. He remembered Charlotte's parting words. Brooks, you are sick. In the nightmare, the scene violently shifted. Brooks saw Charlotte on an ER trauma gurney in critical condition. Blood everywhere. Her blood. Dr. Harrington. The patient was in a massive pileup. Severe hemorrhaging deep coma, an ER nurse shouted frantically. It was the first surgery Brooks had performed after finishing his residency. The ECG flatlined multiple times before a faint, thready heartbeat returned. The grueling surgery lasted 12 hours and Charlotte was finally transferred to the ICU. Even through the thick surgical gloves, Brooks still remembered the terrifying warmth of Charlotte's blood. During the operation, he had prayed to a God he didn't believe in countless times in his head. Live, please do not give up. Don't let the efforts of all these people be in vain. Live. Thankfully, Charlotte's will to survive was exceptionally ferocious. She was the strongest patient Brooks had ever encountered. The day Charlotte finally woke up, Brooks brought a bouquet of aggressively sanitized sunflowers to her room. It was the only vibrant color in the sterile white room. On the bed, Charlotte wore an oxygen mask. Her breathing was weak, but she managed a frail smile. Her voice was so hoarse it was barely a whisper. Thank you, Dr. Harrington. I heard everything you said. That was the exact moment Brooks felt his own heart violently kickstart after years of being dead. The desperate pleas he had whispered by her bedside while she was comatose, she had heard every single word. Brooks, you saved me, and I loved you without a single regret for 10 years. How about we call it even? In the dream, Charlotte was in a wheelchair. She turned and asked him this, but his throat felt cemented shut. He couldn't force a single word out. Brooks, I truly loved you, but we are really truly over. After those words echoed, Brooks jolted awake again. He ripped open the blackout curtains. The London sky was still slate gray, and the rain was coming down in sheets. Brooks couldn't see the city, nor could he see his future with Charlotte. Perhaps that future simply didn't exist anymore. Brooks smiled a hollow, bitter smile. He realized that he really desperately needed to see a psychiatrist. Brooks was truly sick. After lunch, a torrential downpour flooded the streets. Liam offered to drive. "I know London better than you do, Charlotte." Charlotte couldn't argue with that. She only warned him, "This is my new car. Be careful." An Aston Martin DBS, a model that was no longer in production, the absolute last of its kind in the world. Charlotte rarely drove back in New York, but in London, having her own car felt liberating, which was why, unless it was for high-level galas or official corporate events, she usually didn't use a chauffeur. "So what was the actual reason you divorced your ex-husband Liam?" asked suddenly, while Charlotte was buckling her seatbelt in the passenger seat. "What reason is there for any divorce? You fall out of love. You get bored. The novelty wears off." Charlotte didn't want to drag Brooks's name through the mud in front of a near stranger. "So you're saying love has an expiration date and yours was 10 years. Liam spun the steering wheel expertly and leaned slightly closer to Charlotte while waiting at a red light. "I mean, besides your parents or your family, who is going to love you for 10 years or 100, for absolutely no reason." Charlotte redirected Liam's intense gaze back to the road. In her eyes, he was like a naive golden retriever puppy. 22 years old, handed a cushy job at his family's empire. He was essentially still living in an ivory tower, protected by immense wealth, never having experienced the brutal meat grinder of the real world or the devastating lacerations of adult love. Because of that, he was refreshingly direct, relentless. Charlotte didn't mind having a bit more patience with Liam, almost like treating a younger brother. But the rain outside the windshield was turning into a violent deluge. "Watch out," Charlotte saw a dark silhouette suddenly stumble directly into the path of the car and screamed a warning. But it was too late. London Royal Hospital. Liam and Charlotte only suffered minor bruising thanks to the rapid airbag deployment. The Metro Police questioned them and issued a stern warning to Liam, who had been behind the wheel. Charlotte looked at the totally deflated Liam and sighed. "A 3-month license suspension is a slap on the wrist." I asked the trauma nurse. "The man we hit is in bad shape. Do you want to come see him with me?" Liam nodded obediently. Only then did the fierce crease between his brows soften. Charlotte couldn't help but think of the golden retriever she had waiting at home. Pushing open the door to the private ward, the lingering tension in both of them instantly morphed into absolute shock. "Brooks, how? How is it you? Are you okay?" Charlotte rushed to the side of the hospital bed and saw the heavy bandages wrapping Brooks's arm and forehead. Brooks shook his head slightly. His voice was incredibly weak. "I'm fine. Why did you step out into traffic like that? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" Liam frowned, still vibrating with residual adrenaline. He had slammed on the brakes hard thanks to Charlotte's warning. "I'm sorry. I didn't see the crosswalk signal in that moment." Brooks had been completely dissociated. He was just walking forward mechanically, feeling absolutely nothing. He never expected that the people who hit him would be Liam and Charlotte. He looked at Charlotte, whose face was etched with genuine worry, and consoled her. "It's just a hairline fracture. It's nothing." Charlotte's eyes instantly turned red. "Nothing. Do you not know how critical a surgeon's hands are?" It wasn't that her heart ached for him romantically. She was terrified that if this accident permanently damaged his ability to operate, countless people would lose their chance at life. If it weren't for Brooks's hands, she likely wouldn't be in this world today. "You looked completely out of it. The nurse said you also had a lot of older defensive lacerations on your forearms. What happened?" Brooks lowered his gaze. He hesitated, unwilling to tell the ugly truth. "Speak." Charlotte suddenly raised her voice. I was having visual and auditory hallucinations. I saw you and my mother standing in the intersection." Brooks sank into a miserable silence. He didn't know how to articulate the absolute wreckage of his mind. It was excruciating to admit to the woman he loved and his young rival that he was suffering a severe psychotic break. Thankfully, Charlotte didn't interrogate him further and chose silence. She remembered that 2 weeks ago, she had coldly advised Brooks to see a psychiatrist. 10 years. Charlotte recognized at a single glance the extreme psychological deterioration and exhaustion radiating from Brooks. He looked as if he hadn't slept a full night in months. His skin was translucent and the dark bruised circles under his eyes were terrifyingly prominent. "Are you not used to the hospital bed again?" Charlotte asked suddenly. She remembered that for the past 10 years, Brooks could only sleep on a specific brand of imported latex and coconut fiber mattresses. He always complained that hotel beds were either too hard or too soft. Charlotte had once joked that he was as high maintenance as the Princess and the Pea. Brooks had actually gotten offended and slept in his office at the hospital for 3 days. But Brooks only shook his head weakly. "It's just that I can't sleep well. When I close my eyes, I only dream of you and my mother." These were words Brooks could never say out loud. He constantly replayed what Charlotte had said. "We are divorced. There is no future between us. Don't worry, I'll do exactly as you said. When they take this IV out, I'll go see a psychiatrist," Brooks promised seriously. Seeing this, Charlotte felt a sharp stab of sorrow in her chest. Since when had the arrogant Brooks Harrington become so agonizingly cautious, so terrified of offending her, but thinking about it rationally? He had brought all of this upon himself. Those who betray absolute sincerity must be punished. And Brooks's punishment had only just begun. Charlotte's gaze fell on Brooks' hand mottled purple and black from repeated IV insertions. "Right. It wasn't just this once." Charlotte lowered her head. "And the old cuts on your arm. How did you get those?" Liam's tone had softened dramatically toward the man injured because of him. When Charlotte had been questioning the nurses earlier, he had overheard some disturbing details. Dozens of lacerations, old and new overlapping. To this question, Brooks offered no response. Liam suddenly got irritated. "You don't have to answer. I'll go pay the medical bills. Stay as long as you need. They'll discharge you when you're 100% recovered. Don't go crying to the cops later saying I permanently crippled you." Saying this, he looked at Charlotte. Seeing she had no intention of leaving with him, he had no choice but to storm out, slamming the door. Watching the furious Liam stomp away, Charlotte couldn't help but smile while Brooks watched her utterly lost. "Charlotte, I haven't seen you smile like that in a very long time." "Truly," Brooks said without realizing it. He remembered the final week before Charlotte moved out of the penthouse. She was always smiling, but it was never a genuine reaching-the-eyes smile. Even back then, Brooks had subconsciously felt the shift, but his ego had prevented him from actively investigating it. He always assumed that he and Charlotte had infinite time. Because she loved him so much, it didn't matter how badly he neglected her. But back then, he didn't know that love is entirely depleted by 1,000 tiny cuts of indifference. "Don't worry, I'll do what you asked. I've already booked a psychiatric evaluation for this afternoon. Every word you said to me is carved into my brain." Brooks was genuinely terrified his words would make Charlotte uncomfortable. Therefore, carefully reading her expression, he added this desperate reassurance. Hearing this, Charlotte didn't know how to process her emotions. Charlotte wanted to say, "Don't hurt yourself because of me. Stop making these pointless, destructive efforts." But Brooks was currently a psychiatric patient. On top of his severe mental collapse, his physical injuries had been caused by her and Liam's car. Charlotte sighed softly. The atmosphere in the sterile room suddenly became suffocatingly awkward. She stood up and said carefully, "Brooks, take care of yourself. I'll have Brooke arrange for a private chef to handle your meals while you recover." As she turned to leave, Brooks caught the hem of her trench coat. "I know it's a massive imposition, but could you come see me occasionally?" This time, Brooks left the absolute power of decision in Charlotte's hands. He was entirely passive, reduced to begging from a position of total defeat. Charlotte thought for a moment and finally spoke. "As you know, the company just relocated its global operations here, and I truly do not have the time." It was her rejection. Polite but absolute. Brooks' eyelashes fluttered downward, tinged with crushing bitterness. "I understand. Then, don't push yourself too hard at work. Take care of yourself. I will." Charlotte looked at Brooks and smiled a soft, detached smile. "You too." The hospital room door clicked shut silently. The room, which had been buzzing with tension just moments ago, instantly plunged back into a suffocating silence. Brooks turned his head and looked out the window. He was on the 7th floor. Outside, the sprawling oak trees in the hospital courtyard were already turning a burnt orange. The autumn wind howled and countless leaves tore loose, rustling as they fell. Just then, a single leaf mottled yellow and green, blew gently through the cracked window, and landed on Brooks's bed. He stared at it in silence for a very long time. Finally, he forced himself out of bed through the pane, walked to the window, leaned down and picked up the leaf. So many things in the past, like the wind, vanish without leaving a single trace. And just like this fallen leaf ripped away by the storm, what is lost, what is missed, in the end, it never ever returns. Brooks didn't sleep a wink that night. Meanwhile, Back at the Kensington townhouse, Charlotte's heart was a chaotic mess. Martha prepared a bowl of hot chicken and wild rice soup and sat across from her, keeping her company in silence. Martha, he came to London too. Today, while driving with Liam, we hit him, Charlotte blurted out suddenly. Martha didn't ask for clarification. She knew exactly who he was. She only looked with profound maternal tenderness at this girl she had practically raised as her own daughter. Did seeing him make you feel the same way you used to? Charlotte shook her head vehemently. No, seeing him only reminds me of the 10 years I spent being humiliated and deceived. I am not happy when I see him. Let the past stay in the past, miss. If you aren't happy, then don't see him anymore. Those 10 years cannot be refunded, so you must sweep out your heart and march forward into the next 10 years. Martha reached out and grabbed Charlotte's slightly trembling cold hand. If you want starting from right this very second, these can be the most beautiful 10 years of your life. Yes, Charlotte smiled. A shattered mirror is impossible to seamlessly reassemble. Even if you force the shards together with glue, the jagged cracks from the past will remain visible forever. Like a microscopic splinter that can never be extracted, it throbs with a dull ache every time you press on it. Charlotte did not go back to visit Brooks. On one hand, the Kensington Group truly had a mountain of critical issues that required her direct CEO oversight, like breaking ground on the American student luxury housing project. On the other hand, she knew that if she was the root cause of his psychotic break, she absolutely could not give him false hope and drag out his agony. Besides, Liam and Brooke had already handled the financial and legal compensation for the accident flawlessly. Thinking of Liam, Charlotte massaged her temples. He was still aggressively pursuing her, and he had even formally resigned from his cushy risk assessor job at his family's empire to accept a job as her executive personal assistant. So now Charlotte had to look at Liam's face almost every single day. Good morning, miss. Kensington, I made you an iced oat milk latte with exactly 50% vanilla syrup. Speak of the devil. Liam waltzed into her office, balancing a tray of coffees, flashing a brilliant $1 million smile at Charlotte. I specifically ordered an iced Americano, Charlotte said, slightly annoyed. An iced Americano aggressively suppresses your appetite, and drinking too much espresso on an empty stomach will wreck your cortisol levels, Liam explained, as if defying his billionaire boss was the most natural thing in the world. Charlotte frowned deeply. You are my employee now, Liam, not my friend. This is a corporate environment, and you cannot overwrite my executive decisions with your personal preferences. In other words, what your superior explicitly orders you to do, you execute to the letter. She pressed the intercom button. Brooke, please have someone bring me an iced Americano. After receiving confirmation it would be there in 5 minutes, Charlotte glared at Liam. Understood. If you don't want to remain a spoiled nepotism baby your whole life, learn from Brooke. Every qualified heir to an empire needs to survive a grueling stint at the absolute bottom of the corporate ladder. Only by starting from the bottom can you develop actual empathy. She hadn't originally intended to lecture him, but if she let him run wild, he would undermine her authority. Understood, boss. Liam instantly dropped his playful frat boy persona and nodded with dead seriousness. Drink the latte yourself. Work hard so you can be the boss one day. Charlotte adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses and plunged back into the mountain of contracts. In her heart, there were already a million things infinitely more important than romantic love. A severe bone fracture requires 100 days of rest. Brooks spent 45 days locked inside the London Royal Hospital. During those 45 days, he only saw Brooke and Liam. Brooke was relentlessly professional, and whenever he occasionally dared to ask about Charlotte, her response was always a canned, icy corporate line. Miss Kensington is perfectly fine. She is currently tied up in executive meetings. Liam was the exact opposite of Brooke. He would confidently pull up a chair next to Brooks's hospital bed and interrogate him like a morbidly curious child. Sun Tzu said, "Know thy enemy and know thyself, and you will win 100 battles." I have to figure out exactly why Charlotte divorced your ass so I don't make the same catastrophic blunders. Liam didn't seem to think there was anything sociopathic about interrogating the ex-husband he had recently hit with an Aston Martin. His attitude was completely brazen, but Brooks showed zero impatience. Only through Liam could he get tiny agonizing updates on Charlotte's actual life. Charlotte banned me from buying her lattes on my own. She says she has to drink iced Americanos to stay razor sharp. She's been working like a maniac lately. This was what Brooks obsessed over. Today she went to inspect the construction site in the West End and didn't take me with her. Did she work this insanely hard back in New York? Brooks genuinely had no idea. In his memory for the past 10 years, Charlotte had always put him first. She was always right where he could see her exactly when he needed her. He watched a recorded Bloomberg News interview she gave. She looked absolutely devastating sharp and flawlessly professional. She seemed to be thriving in her new life. Brooks suddenly thought that maybe this wasn't such a bad thing. In the past, Charlotte had done mountains of unglamorous, heavy lifting for him in total silence, expecting zero recognition. Now it was his turn to watch her from the shadows. As long as he could see that she was healthy and thriving, that had to be enough. Brooks wasn't sure if this was what letting go felt like, or if it was just giving up, or if the toxic obsession had finally burned itself out. When he woke up in the middle of the night staring at the ceiling, he still dreamed of countless memories with Charlotte. 10 years held too many unforgettable moments. Their first major trip was to Iceland. They watched the spectacular northern lights, standing in a desolate snowfield. The first time they tried to cook a meal together in the penthouse, they totally ruined basic scrambled eggs and burnt the toast. And the first time they went to a theme park, the first time they went to the movies. Almost all the firsts in Brooks's adult life were tied to Charlotte. After finally being discharged from the hospital, Brooks went straight to a top-tier psychiatrist in Harley Street. Severe misophobia and OCD were heavily entrenched psychological disorders. The doctor strongly recommended he return to the U.S. to enter an intensive, long-term inpatient treatment program. Walking out of the clinic, Brooks looked up at the sky. It was late autumn. London would soon enter its bleak winter season. Brooks, wouldn't you love to have a massive snowball fight? Snow is so clean as the rain. Suddenly, Charlotte's voice echoed vividly in his ears. Remember when we went to Iceland? I loved it. Do you want to move there with me forever, Brooks? You know the rule is you have to confess your love on the day of the first snowfall. I love you. Brooks clenched his fists. He desperately wanted to see Charlotte, just one last time. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Brooks' work number. Good afternoon. I would like to see Miss Kensington one last time. Truly the last time. Please relay this to her and let her make the decision. It was the new emergency contact number Brooke had given the hospital after the accident. 10 minutes later, Brooke replied, Miss Kensington says that is acceptable. Send me the time and location ASAP. She is extremely busy. Brooks checked the local London weather forecast. With a trembling hand, he typed out a painfully polite reply. November 12th. 3:30 p.m. Regent's Park. November 12th. Regent's Park. Brooks arrived a full hour before the agreed time. He checked the weather app again. Today, London was scheduled to have its first snowfall of the year. The first snow, sitting on a cold wrought iron bench, Brooks gripped a small silver crucifix in his pocket. It had been given to him by a homeless man with a shock of white hair when he was checking out of the Four Seasons. At the time, he had tried to reject it, saying, I'm sorry, I don't believe in Jesus. In reality, he didn't believe in anything. He was a hardened man of science. But the old man had said, In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I bless you, my son. May everything your heart truly desires come to pass. Hearing this, Brooks hesitated. In that split second of hesitation, the filthy old man had pulled him into a shockingly warm embrace. Then he turned and vanished into a winding cobblestone alley. When Brooks snapped out of it and tried to chase him down to give him some cash, the man was gone. There was only a young blonde boy on a rusted bicycle with a basket full of flowers selling them to passers-by. Brooks bit his lip and approached the boy. Excuse me, could you help me pick out some flowers for the person I love? In their 10 years together, Brooks had almost never bought Charlotte flowers, even though she never complained what woman doesn't like receiving flowers. The boy expertly bundled together a rustic bouquet of pale primroses. He told Brooks enthusiastically, Primroses mean you want to be with the person you love forever. It means that other than the person standing right in front of you, there is absolutely no one else in your heart. It's a declaration of total devotion and a promise to love only her for the rest of your life. Mister, these are the absolute best flowers to give the woman you love, the boy insisted. And so, Brooks bought the primroses. Armed with the crucifix from the old man and the small bouquet, he arrived at the meeting spot. The wait was excruciatingly long. Brooks' heart hammered in his chest. He was terrified that Brooke would suddenly text him saying Charlotte couldn't make it due to a corporate emergency. Lately, he had frequently seen Charlotte on CNBC and financial blogs spearheading massive acquisitions. Brooks knew Charlotte was a titan in her industry now. This only made him realize even more violently just how much she must have loved him to throw all of that away to play house with him. Thankfully, at exactly 3:32 p.m., Charlotte arrived. She said, looking slightly annoyed, "I apologize. The traffic was worse than expected. I'm 2 minutes late." She remembered how violently Brooks used to rage when people were late. "It's okay." Brooks handed the bouquet of primroses to Charlotte. Lately, he had been aggressively sticking to the heavy psychiatric medication regimen his doctor prescribed. And the person standing before him was the Charlotte he desperately wanted to love forever. So a 2-minute delay was perfectly fine. For me, Charlotte was genuinely surprised. "Thank you." But she accepted them gracefully. "They're beautiful," she complimented politely. "But, do you have something you needed to say to me?" Charlotte had agreed to this meeting not because her heart was wavering, not out of nostalgia, and certainly not out of pity. She just wanted to put a hard, official, and final full stop on their 10-year history. "Charlotte, it's snowing." That was the second thing Brooks said that day. He looked up at the sky. Countless tiny crystalline snowflakes were drifting down from the slate-gray London sky. Charlotte froze. She remembered telling Brooks that she wanted to see the first snowfall with him. "Brooks, we've already." Even though it was brutally cruel, Charlotte had to remind him. This first snow was 10 years too late. It was no longer the magical first snow she had once begged to see. "I know," Brooks smiled, a shattered, soft smile. "I just wanted to officially say goodbye to you. From this moment on, I will never bother you again." He looked deeply at Charlotte. "I'm flying back to New York. My flight leaves the day after tomorrow." It was strange. While sitting on the bench waiting, he had a million frantic things he wanted to say, but now that they were face to face, his throat locked up. He just wanted to stand in the quiet snow with Charlotte for a little while. "Charlotte, I know with absolute certainty that I truly love you. This love will probably last 10 years or 100, but that's my burden to bear. I know I can never make you happy again," Brooks said with a devastating total resignation. "So today, just let me say goodbye to you." Charlotte didn't know how to process the barrage of emotions in that moment. She had desperately wanted to hear an "I love you" from him. She had waited for it for so long, so painfully long, that the girl who had needed it had died inside her. The woman standing here today clearly had no use for these words anymore. A blast of freezing wind swept through the park. For a split second, Charlotte seemed to hallucinate countless memories of her and Brooks playing like a film reel. They were frozen solid, buried under the radioactive ruins of a 10-year lie. One scene was particularly vivid. 10 years ago, days after her near-fatal surgery, Charlotte was finally allowed to be wheeled outside to get some fresh air. Under the massive ancient oak tree at Lenox Medical Center, she properly met Brooks for the first time while fully conscious. "Dr. Harrington, can we formally introduce ourselves? I don't want to just keep calling you Dr. Harrington." If that beginning had never happened, perhaps the suffocating 10-year web of love and hatred would never have existed. Did I hate him? Charlotte asked herself. Perhaps at rock bottom, she truly did hate Brooks. But now there was nothing left but a vast, empty relief. At 20 years old, she had loved a man with every ounce of blood in her veins. She hadn't betrayed anyone, and she hadn't intentionally destroyed anyone. That was enough. She could sleep with a clear conscience. "Charlotte, I hope you find a happiness greater than anyone else on earth." Brooks didn't tell her the hidden meaning behind the primroses. When he bought the flowers, he suddenly remembered the daisies she used to love. The young florist had told him that daisies symbolize a love one doesn't dare to confess. So if Charlotte didn't say it, he didn't need to force it on her. The snowflakes landed on his palm and melted instantly. Charlotte, standing in the whitewashed world, looked at Brooks. "Brooks, I hope you find happiness too. I don't regret my 20s. I hope you don't either." She reached out and lightly brushed a dusting of snow off the shoulder of his black wool coat. "Let the past stay in the past. Both of us need to walk forward without ever looking back. Be brave." "I will," Brooks smiled, tears finally spilling over his lashes as he nodded. They stood there until the snow finally stopped. They walked out of Regent's Park side by side. Being able to walk the same path side by side one last time was already a miracle. The two stopped at the edge of the snowy street and exchanged one final look. "You go first. This time I'll watch your back." Brooks said this because he remembered the countless times he had abandoned Charlotte to rush back to the hospital or to rush to Vanessa. Back then, Charlotte had stood in silence, watching his back disappear into the distance. Brooks couldn't even fathom the crushing despair and humiliation Charlotte must have felt in those moments. So this time he had to be the one to watch her leave. Only by standing in the exact same spot could you truly understand the pain. But saying those words felt like someone was dragging a serrated blade across Brooks's vocal cords. Goodbye, Brooks. Charlotte didn't hesitate. She smiled, a brilliant, unburdened smile waved at him, turned on her heel and walked away. She didn't look back a single time. November 14th, Heathrow Airport. Attention passenger Brooks Harrington. Your flight to New York JFK is currently boarding. Please proceed to gate 42 immediately. The smooth, automated British voice echoed continuously over the PA system. Brooks, standing near the gate, kept scanning the chaotic terminal with desperate expectation. He was waiting for a person who would probably never show up. He was waiting for Charlotte. Since their meeting in the park, they had zero contact, so he had only been able to text his flight info to Brooks' work phone. Humans are tragic creatures. Once you see someone, you instantly become greedy and want to see them again. They had clearly said their final goodbyes, but before leaving this continent forever, he wanted to see her face one more time, because he knew that once he got on this plane, there was a very real chance he would never lay eyes on her again in this lifetime. Brooks couldn't keep his promise to himself. He waited for a very, very long time. Until the final, absolute last call warning blared over the speakers, Brooks still hadn't seen Charlotte. And at that exact moment, Charlotte, standing on a VIP balcony in a luxury lounge where Brooks couldn't possibly see her, watched his back disappear down the jet bridge for the very last time. Have a safe flight, Brooks. The seasons changed. The brutal winter quietly receded, and spring rushed in to take its place. The freezing cold and the sweltering heat took turns. Charlotte didn't return to the United States, and she heard absolutely nothing about Brooks. But on New Year's Eve or on her birthday, he always left a single quiet comment on her abandoned private Instagram account. Happy New Year, or Happy Birthday. Charlotte seemed to have forgotten the account even existed. Brooks had never seen a single new update on it. In fact, there was barely any content on the page to begin with. Just a few blurry, candid photos of her and him that she had sneakily taken while he was reading or sleeping. While locked away in an intensive psychiatric facility in upstate New York, Brooks survived off the memory of Charlotte. Years passed. That year, Charlotte successfully brokered massive corporate alliances in London with the largest real estate conglomerates from Japan and the US. The American Student Housing Project was an overwhelming success, expanding to 3 new cities. Liam, after working as her relentlessly abused personal assistant for 6 months, was forcefully summoned back to New York by the CEO of the Montgomery Group to take over the family business. Charlotte finally found total peace, and with her empire running itself, she began traveling the world on her own terms. The Grand Canyon in Arizona, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, the Northern Lights in Finland, the brutal snowscapes of Siberia. Charlotte spent an entire year just walking, stopping, and breathing. Finally, she arrived at Victoria Falls, straddling the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. Standing before the apocalyptic roar and magnificence of the falls, Charlotte finally logged into her private Instagram account for the first time in years. The unread DMs and notifications piled up like an avalanche. She didn't bother opening a single one. Without a shred of hesitation, she bulk deleted every single post she had ever made about her past marriage. Then Charlotte uploaded a single breathtaking photo of Victoria Falls. The caption read, "Seeing the sheer immensity of the earth and the sky, I finally realized my own insignificance. My only wish is world peace." She had no idea that in faraway New York, Brooks, who had a notification alert set for her account, didn't sleep a wink that night. A human life is 100 years. Some people are trapped forever in the exact moment of a goodbye. 2 years later, Charlotte Kensington returned to the United States. She had been personally invited by the mayor of New York City to deliver the keynote address at a massive global entrepreneurship summit at the Javits Center. In the VIP dressing room, Brooke was rapid-firing the day's itinerary at Charlotte. A celebrity stylist rushed in holding a rack of garments in dry cleaning bags. The city's top makeup artist was meticulously applying Charlotte's foundation. "Miss Kensington, your skin is so flawless, you barely need any coverage. You're so pale, I actually have to warm up your tone a bit," the makeup artist gushed, adding the final touches and looking at her in the vanity mirror. Hearing this, Charlotte looked at her own reflection. For a moment, she was stunned. This face was completely different from the one she had 10 years ago. It was even different from 3 years ago. Or more accurately, the aura, the absolute lethal sharpness in her eyes, she had metamorphosed into a carbon copy of her legendary father. "Charlotte, you've done so well. In her daze, Charlotte almost hallucinated her parents standing behind her chair, looking at her with overwhelming pride. This mirror felt like a magic portal. Charlotte's eyes instantly welled with tears. At that exact moment, a violent commotion erupted outside the dressing room door. "Wow, look who it is. Isn't this the Black Widow of Manhattan high society?" Vanessa Caldwell, a shrill voice, shrieked. "How the hell did you end up as a glorified makeup assistant? Who are you supposed to be working on? Does the client know you're a professional gold digger and a total fraud? I bet you didn't tell them. If they knew, they'd think you were cursed. Don't you make yourself sick." The VIP dressing room walls were paper thin. Charlotte heard every single word with crystal clarity. She frowned slightly. "Vanessa Caldwell. Brooke, go see if that's the Vanessa Caldwell we know." Charlotte didn't know that Vanessa had become a complete pariah hunted by the tabloids. She just assumed she had misheard or it was a coincidence. New York is a massive city, and how could Vanessa possibly be working as a lowly makeup assistant? 2 minutes later, Brooke returned. She dragged a woman in behind her. Charlotte turned around, surprised. Before Brooke could explain the situation, the woman stepped forward aggressively, and Charlotte instantly recognized the raspy, frantic voice. "Charlotte Kensington, you're back in the States." One look confirmed it. It was Vanessa Caldwell without a doubt, but the Vanessa standing in front of her possessed absolutely zero trace of the arrogant, popular high school cheerleader she once was. She wore a cheap surgical mask, and the eyes exposed above it looked dead hollow and utterly exhausted. Her body, which used to be famously curvaceous, was now so emaciated she was practically unrecognizable. The generic jeans she wore were frayed at the hems, the color completely washed out. "Miss Kensington is back to deliver the keynote speech at an elite global summit. We just saved you from getting mauled out there, so don't try anything stupid." Brooke physically inserted herself between Vanessa and Charlotte, her eyes blazing with hostility and high alert. Vanessa fired back, her voice dripping with venomous self-pity. "Look at me. What kind of threat could I possibly be to her now? Then why are you causing a scene like this?" Charlotte gestured with a slight shake of her head for Brooke to step aside. Vanessa struggled to speak, especially in front of Charlotte, who looked like a literal goddess of wealth and power. Luckily, Charlotte didn't press her. Now was not the time to dig up ancient history, and between her and Vanessa there was absolutely nothing worth reminiscing about. "Wait in my dressing room until the paparazzi and the event staff clear out." Charlotte picked up her Birkin bag and smiled faintly. Even though Vanessa had once aggressively inserted herself into Charlotte's marriage and destroyed it, Charlotte had no desire to kick a drowning dog. It wasn't that Charlotte was some benevolent saint. The catastrophic failure of her marriage wasn't solely the fault of one manipulative woman, and those ancient grievances had long since turned to dust. Vanessa's current pathetic state proved that she had already been thoroughly, brutally punished by karma. Charlotte didn't want to inflict more pain on this pitiful, detestable woman. "Thank you." Before stepping out of the dressing room, Charlotte heard Vanessa's broken whisper, but after the keynote speech ended, Charlotte received an urgent call from the NYPD's 10th Precinct. "Miss Kensington, regarding the grand larceny charges filed against Miss Vanessa Caldwell, we need you to come down to the precinct to give a formal statement." Charlotte was completely baffled. She had immediately cross-checked with Brooke, the lead stylist, the makeup artist, and the PR reps from the brands, and absolutely nothing of value was missing from her dressing room. Several event coordinators filed the report. They stated they saw Miss Caldwell rummaging aggressively through the bags in your VIP suite, and since Miss Caldwell has a prior criminal record for petty theft and fraud, we brought her in for interrogation. Even if you aren't missing anything, please come down to the precinct to formally clear it up. Charlotte had no idea Vanessa had that kind of criminal record now. On the ride in the back of the Maybach to the precinct, Brooke read off a detailed dossier on Vanessa's spectacular downfall over the past 3 years. That year, Vanessa had been violently exposed on every major media outlet as a serial homewrecker and a grifter. To save their own skins and reputations, every single wealthy man she had targeted publicly claimed she seduced them, and they filed aggressive civil suits demanding the return of all gifts and assets. Vanessa was expelled from her fake Ivy League program, her degree was publicly revoked, and she was blacklisted from the fashion industry. Later, she posted that pathetic apology video and liquidated everything she owned to pay back the settlements, but the public refused to let her breathe. If a powerful man makes a mistake, he can be forgiven with a few tears and a PR campaign. But if a woman makes a mistake, even if she repents and pays it all back, she is permanently nailed to the cross of public shame and whipped daily. Vanessa had lived in absolute hell for the last 2 years. She bounced between shady, under-the-table jobs, essentially homeless. Stealing was an act of pure, starving desperation. Later, she tried to get clean and somehow landed this gig as a freelance makeup assistant. And now she was about to lose this job too. Charlotte paid Vanessa's bail. It was spring in New York. The night wind rolling off the Hudson River was still biting cold. Charlotte draped her heavy cashmere trench coat over the shivering, skeletal Vanessa. "I know you didn't steal anything today," Charlotte said simply. The event organizers had handed the police the security footage from the hallway, which proved Vanessa was only frantically digging through a cooler bag looking for a bottle of water. "If you're willing, I'll have Brooke arrange a normal entry-level job for you in a state where no one knows who you are, just to act as a transition. Once you get back on your feet and survive this nightmare, you can find a better job on your own." Charlotte pulled out a silk handkerchief and gently wiped the endless stream of tears running down Vanessa's ruined face. Her voice was surprisingly tender. "How does that sound? Why are you helping me?" Vanessa sobbed uncontrollably, her knees buckling. "I'm not helping you. If I hadn't told you to hide in my dressing room, you wouldn't have been dragged into a police precinct in handcuffs," Charlotte stated matter-of-factly. Vanessa let out a wet, hysterical laugh through her tears. "Thank you." Charlotte shook her head and gestured for Brooke to take Vanessa away to handle the relocation logistics. As she was about to climb into the waiting SUV, Vanessa suddenly broke away from Brooke, ran toward Charlotte, and bowed at a deep 90-degree angle. With bloodshot, swollen eyes, she screamed, "I am so sorry for what I did to you." Back then, Charlotte hadn't expected that after all these years, she would finally hear a genuine "I'm sorry" out of Vanessa Caldwell's mouth. But she couldn't bring herself to say, "It's okay." After all, the agonizing lacerations from those years were brutally real, and they had almost killed her. Charlotte could only look down at Vanessa and say, "Live your life well, and don't ever betray yourself again." Barely had she finished speaking when the tinted window of the Maybach slowly rolled up and the car vanished into the endless New York spring night. After that night, Vanessa never saw Charlotte Kensington again. The Park Avenue penthouse. This was the home Charlotte and Brooks had once shared. During the years she lived in London, Brooke had sent a private cleaning crew to maintain it. Because of that, everything before her eyes was exactly the same as the day she walked out. Charlotte sat by the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. Next to her was a chilled bottle of Perrier-Jouet champagne. The glittering skyline of Manhattan was as intoxicating as ever, but she no longer felt the same desperate attachment to it. Over the past 3 years, Charlotte had accepted the advances of a few incredible men and had engaged in several relationships, both long and short. But every single time, she was the one to pull the plug first. It was as if, after incinerating every ounce of her soul loving Brooks Harrington, she was physically incapable of loving anyone else with her whole heart ever again. It was unfair to those men, which was why Charlotte rarely waded into the waters of romance anymore. Living alone, answering to no one, it was a violently free and beautiful life, wasn't it? And across town in an Upper West Side condo, Brooks's long surgical fingers tapped gently against the glass of a massive fish tank, playing with 2 butterfly fish. These were the exact same 2 fish Charlotte had bought all those years ago. Butterfly fish can live up to 10 years in captivity, so they were quite resilient. "We sincerely thank Miss Kensington for everything she has done for the New York economy and for young female entrepreneurs nationwide. She is an absolute titan and a role model for us all." The local news stations had been playing clips of Charlotte's keynote speech for days. Brooks knew she was back in the city, but he didn't dare go looking for her. Over the past 2 or 3 years, he had undergone grueling intensive psychiatric treatment for his severe OCD and mysophobia and had quietly returned to the operating room at a different lower-tier hospital. He started from the bottom as a regular attending surgeon. His personality remained freezing cold and utterly uncommunicative, which resulted in frequent complaints from hospital admin. But his surgical genius was so unparalleled that he constantly received plaques of gratitude and tearful letters from the patients whose lives he saved. The good vastly outweighed the bad. However, Brooks Harrington was also incapable of loving anyone else ever again. The crater in his heart as the years ground on became more and more densely packed, with Charlotte packed so tightly that it physically could not belong to anyone but her. The only tragedy was that Charlotte Kensington would never ever need him to be the only one again. That night, one person slept a deep, dreamless sleep while the other tossed and turned in agonizing purgatory. The next day at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, it was the anniversary of the death of Charlotte's father. Charlotte brought a bottle of ultra-rare Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon to his grave. Just as she was uncorking it, Brooks walked up the path. holding a bottle of the exact same wine and a massive bouquet of pure white daisies. So it was you all these years. Charlotte wasn't particularly shocked. Brooke had already told her, every single time she sent someone to honor Mr. Kensington on this date while she was in London, there was already an incredibly expensive bottle of wine and a fresh bouquet of flowers resting against the headstone. I'm sorry, I didn't plan to run into you on purpose. Brooke's first knee-jerk reaction was to frantically apologize. He was panicking internally. He had stupidly forgotten that if Charlotte was in New York, she would undoubtedly come to honor her father in person. He was terrified Charlotte would think he was stalking her or trying to manipulate a reunion. Since when had the arrogant Brooks Harrington become so cripplingly anxious with such a pathetic lack of self-esteem, so hypersensitive to her every mood? Charlotte was momentarily stunned. I didn't think you did. Thank you for doing this all these years, she bit her lip and said softly. No, you don't have to thank me. Brooks actually stuttered slightly. Charlotte poured the dark red wine onto the earth before the headstone and asked first, how have you been these past few years? The last time they had stood before Mr. Kensington's grave, it had been 3 years ago. 3 years ago, they were still legally husband and wife. But today, 3 years later, they couldn't even call each other friends. I've been doing well, Brooks replied, his voice tight. And you, I've been doing well too, Charlotte smiled faintly. Brooks, are you moving forward? To this question, Brooks could not formulate an answer. He couldn't lie and say he had forgotten her. Luckily, Charlotte didn't need him to answer. Brooks, I'm flying out tomorrow. I don't know when I'll be back in New York. I wanted to tell you something. I still haven't completely forgotten you. I haven't entirely gotten over the past. But my stance remains exactly the same as it was in London. There is absolutely zero possibility between us. She looked at him with chilling, total serenity. I know, Brooks replied, his voice breaking. Being able to see you today, it's enough to keep me alive. I don't ask for anything else. Good. Then you leave first. From now on, you don't need to come here anymore. Charlotte knew this was unimaginably cruel, but she had to sever the final rotting thread. It couldn't go on like this. Both he and she had to keep walking forward. They could not remain trapped in the graveyard of their past. Let's not meet again, Brooks. Charlotte, let's not meet again.